So we have immediate stuff that has been happening within the fandom literally today. I've been getting messages from Shannon all day about Percy Jackson fandom stuff.
Yeah, about the update accounts that, especially one in particular that everyone knows, that's on Twitter that was like wreaking absolute havoc today. um, so we were gonna talk about that right away, and since Becky Riordan watched our video, if you're watching this, I try not to swear too much because she doesn't like it when people swear. So I'm probably going to swear about during this part. So if you're watching, sorry.
Yeah.
But I hate the update accounts. We've talked about them before.
Mhm.
But there's one in particular that everyone knows. It's the biggest one that's on Twitter. And it did this last year. Where I was just talking about this the other day, that the funniest thing that I think Becky ever did in the history of her life was when she called that one out when they were teasing like new spoilers during Sea of Monsters filming, and was like, "What?" Like literally just asked what, and they didn't know what to say. She just said hi back to them when they responded, and that was like the end of it. And so that same account today was posting stuff. First, they said that filming for Titan's Curse would happen in July,
Mhm.
which means that if that was true, they have a month of like what they call boot camp, where everyone shows up and they do training for anything, and they have like tons of meetings about their character and their character arc, and it's like a huge
Mhm.
thing that they do to get ready. And so I'm like, so if that's true, they're going to be like back in Vancouver in a month at the end of this month. Like that seems crazy that they would actually do that. But they said the Titans Curse would start filming in July, that they're already like casting the roles for the different things. And then they also posted about how the the ancient Egyptian books, what are they called? The Kane Chronicles,
Mhm.
like that 20th Century Fox like officially like said they're going to adapt them, I guess, which I was like, that's a weird thing to say because it's weird because Becky's been talking about the Kane Chronicles and talking about having meetings about it for
Mhm.
like weeks, like
Yeah.
months even, but especially the last like month or so, she's mentioned it on and off. And so it's like, yeah, we know that this isn't anything new. What's going on? And so um, Becky went on Threads today and responded to somebody who said like, "Oh, they're casting. I can't believe they're casting Nico and Bianca," and just said like, "No, like not yet." And I responded to that to her, just saying like, "This is like my villain origin story. How people just believe this account and don't think about anything that they say." And she's like, "Maybe I was too harsh," and I'm like, "No." You should have been harsher. And I told her that, like, you're allowed to be harsher to this account because if you look at the Update Percy's account, which is the account that we're talking about,
Mhm.
in their bio is the Nexus Point News like website linked. And
Mhm.
so that is the website that posts all of these quote unquote stories or exclusives that have nothing against but sources.
Mhm.
Sources say this. Who
Yeah.
says what? Where is this info coming from? Like this, that Nexus Point News account made the Marvel fandom a couple months ago think that a new trailer was going to come out on a certain day, and it never happened that day. And like, just think for a second that the updates accounts like this make money. Literally, they get paid when tweets that they make get clicks, and they make more money if you click on their link to read their story.
Yeah.
That Updates Percy account literally has it in their bio that they work for that website, and the only things that they ever post as exclusives are things that that website is posting.
Mhm.
Like, they're literally making money off of doing this. Do you really think they're not gonna just like make some shit up because there's nothing else going on like news wise yet right now,
Yeah.
and they need to like make money somewhere? Like, duh. Because Becky already said, like, no, that's not happening yet. And, like, yeah, obviously that's not happening yet. That's crazy to think that they would have only have them be off for 5 months before they start filming again for another, like, 7 to 8 months. Like,
Yeah.
I, like, straight up, like, felt panic when I saw that. I was like, the idea that that could be true is scary, like, for, like, the kids involved. Like, I want them to have more time. Jesus Christ. Much
Yeah.
less, like, the adults that would be involved. Like, they've barely been home since all of that happened. And so it's just, I wish that people would like look at what they're saying and like think about like is this based on anything? Um, but as someone who's been in fandom since 1997, when I was 12 years old, can I also just make the point that that Nexus Point news site just knows the sites that people within the industry use to point to like post casting announcements.
Hmm.
That's literally what they use for everything. They know the sites where that people within the industry post things like that, and that's what they're using for every single thing they ever post about Percy Jackson and probably other things too. I'm like, congratulations, you know how to use a website. You know how to log in. You know somebody who's in the industry if you're not in it yourself and you know how to look that up. I'm not giving you a cookie or anything else for that matter. Like that's all that is because all they post are things involving casting because they're just reading the casting calls. And they're probably reading things for the Vancouver area, assuming and trying to figure out when these certain casting calls or like when studios around the area are being reserved, that it's for certain projects. That's literally all it is.
Yeah.
They don't actually know anything. You could figure this out if you spent the time to figure out those websites too. Like, I don't know why I'm like, maybe people don't know this stuff because they haven't been around in fandom as long, where they didn't have to go, you don't have to go searching as much for information anymore because of the internet. They used to have to like literally search and dig and research to find things out about productions like this when the internet wasn't quite as prevalent as it is now. Which is why I know this stuff. And it's just so annoying that, and especially because like when we brought them up earlier, was because they take the things that the cast say out of context and turn it into like this huge news story that then in turns has people like Becky have to like make statements about it.
Yeah.
And it's just frustrating. Like, can't you figure out something else to do to make money off of the internet than be like somebody who literally like rides the coattails of somebody else's work?
Yeah.
It's just gross. Like, I know that that's how the internet works, but I don't even like making like clickbaity things for our YouTube channel because it feels gross as hell to do that kind of stuff, much less something like that that's just reporting on what other people are doing and playing this game to try to report it first. Like when they reported about the Kane Chronicles being like, we're the first people that broke this story. You posted last year that they might do something one day. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
That's nothing. It's just like the thing we were gonna say before all of that happened was that the Percy Jackson cast is probably gonna be at the Disney like upfront. Upfronts is like where all of the things involving like TV for all the different studios, they all have like a day where they all have like back to back to back, basically like press conferences for all the different shows. Last year, the trio went and it's in New York City, and they went last year. They're probably going to go this year, and it's next Tuesday. So, like, if that one account can, like, calm down, there probably will be things happening around that time because they usually put something out before the kids go to an event publicly. They tend to do that so that when they're there the next day, they have something to talk about. Like, it's honestly a pretty easy strategy to notice, and also it's an easy strategy for them because they have things to talk about in interviews. So if you can just like wait a week before going off on your own little like magical adventure, like that would be really great. Just Jesus Christ.
Yeah, especially because Becky just said, what was it, like a week ago, that it's going to be a lull. There's going to be a lull between when we hear new show news for a while.
Yeah. Like she was just saying, like, yeah, it's been kind of slow and we don't like it either, but this is just how it is. And it's like, can we like chill out? Like this show there's 2 different seasons being worked on at the same time. We sound like ridiculous people to be like, there's no news right now. And it's like, there's gonna be really soon. Like, they're putting out, there's gonna be a ton of promotion for season 2 and watching it, and they're gonna be working on season 3 no matter what's going on with what we know about it yet or not. Yeah. Like, we sound ridiculous. Honest, I feel ridiculous even like trying to say things like that because I'm like, what are you talking about? Like there's two different seasons in production at the same time right now. What are we doing? There's tons of stuff happening. We just have to wait a little bit. Like the best, I can't remember when this was. It was a while ago, many months ago. But at some point, many months ago, I remember Becky posting something or other about like the 20-year anniversary. And I remember at the time sending that to you, and I was like, they're going to do something for the 20-year anniversary. Just from how she's talking about it, like I was like, yeah, that's her trying to say it without saying it.
Yeah.
That's on June 28th. And so no matter what, like crazy shenanigans, that site is saying that they're going to start filming in July. No matter what, they're going to be doing things to celebrate that in some way. Like Becky's actually said that like last week, but we were pretty sure they were going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Before I like get too distracted, I wanted to like say it more towards the beginning of the episode that the next 2 weeks we're going to have people come on to talk about just like a different, basically something we thought it would be fun for them to talk about. One person came to us and we asked the other person. The first week is attachment theory or lack thereof
Yes.
in this book series, and the next week is like stan kind of culture of like fandom and how it gets so toxic, and just fandom in general. And so I wanted to say that towards the beginning, that if you've watched any of our stuff and think it would be interesting to talk to us about something, our contact information is in our little video description, so just go and talk to us somewhere.
Yeah.
And we'd probably be interested in talking about it, as long as it's not Luke was actually a victim or something similar to that. We would be willing to listen.
If you're actually open to a debate, maybe. Like if we could.
No.
No.
No, I can't. Debates are like a waste of time to me. Like we've had this whole discourse online the last like week or so in general about debates, but
Yeah.
most of the time when it comes, like, I can have discussions with people, but if you go in with somebody that is like so sure that they're right, it's like they're not really hearing you, and they're also like kind of twisting what you're saying around to like fit what they want you to be saying. Like one thing from the Danny Mata epic, the musical stuff we talked about last week, that is a good example of that. Is that people were saying to us like it's kind of wrong that you guys are like judging him for how he feels about this like work and how it's like connected to his own trauma. And I was like, how did you watch that, and the thing you got out of it is that we are judging him. We are judging you. The epic fandom. We are judging you because we were like him. We thought that you guys took this stuff seriously. That's why I posted the videos that I did, because I thought you guys took this stuff seriously, and I was wrong. And we were punished by being horribly harassed for months on end. And so when we were talking about that, we were saying we felt bad because we didn't want him to go through the same thing we did. But somehow us talking about that and saying, like, us realizing we felt bad because we were watching somebody who thought this group of people cared about his abuse and they didn't, they somehow thought that we were saying something bad about him. And it's like, because you need us to be the bad guy. Hi, Sky. But yeah, you need us to be the bad guy. That's all that was, because there was nothing there that ever gave you the indication that we were saying anything like that.
Yeah, the amount of people that were like, what are you saying about Danny, or why are you using his trauma? It was just like, you missed the entire point because you just wanted to come in swinging.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does happen. Yeah, so, let's see, I'm trying to think what else came up this week, aside from the chapters.
Oh, well, the other thing I wanted to talk about was, I guess, child stars, child actors, and just how people dehumanize them, I guess. That's like the overall theme.
Oh yeah, the one video that you posted started taking off on our YouTube a little bit too. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I looked up these people's names because I'm not good at remembering people's names, but Ivan Jogia. I'm probably saying his name wrong. He was an actor that was on the Victoria show that I think was on Nickelodeon. It
Oh,
was
I'm
Nickelodeon.
wondering what he was from. Yeah.
I had to look that up because I was a little bit too old to watch those shows when like Selena Gomez was like really little, I think was around that time. Um, but he was on Hassan Minhaj's shows, his podcast that he does. And Hassan is somebody that he got a lot of attention a couple years ago because he did a standout that was like talking about just, racism stuff.
Mhm.
In like but still in like a very entertaining way, and got a lot of people's attention about how he was able to talk about these things. And so he has like a podcast kind of show thing, and Yvonne was on it, and I knew that he had a book. He put out a book recently where he was talking about being a child actor during this time. And during like the interview, one clip that I saw was Hassan asking him, like, is having a child be famous child abuse? Is that a form of child abuse? And I just made a video saying, yes,
Yeah.
it is. Like, it is. Like, there are just inherently things that systems of the world that are just inherently abusive. It doesn't mean that kids can't take part in them, that you can't enjoy them while you're watching them, or that they should end or something. But it just is like the truth that there are things that are just inherently abusive. And having a child become famous when nobody thinks that children are people is inherently an abusive thing for them to be going through. And it's better to look at them like that than to act like everything is great and wonderful in their life until they tell you about it later on that it wasn't, because obviously it wasn't. Nobody cares what happens to kids in normal situations, much less when they're in the middle of all of that. And then the other thing they said that I that I really liked was Hassan asked Yvonne, like, what do you think about like all of the documentaries that are coming out about this stuff? Like, what did you think after you watched the documentary about Nickelodeon that of course I can't remember the name of right now?
Quiet on
And
quiet on set.
yeah, that. And he said that it was gossip mongering and trauma porn masquerading as sympathy. And I was like, yes, I have basically said that before. Like our patron Isa actually sent me that clip because I've said for a while, for like the last year, I've said that there's like this weird cottage industry of people making like trauma porn out of severe trauma survivors' pain. And like Mandy watched like the first episode of the Eight Passengers documentary that the kids did, and
Hmm.
I cannot even try get myself to open up like the Hulu app to even try to watch it because I'm like, these kids are being forced to do this and tell these stories very publicly because like putting your trauma out there and trauma porning your life story out is the only way that they can get attention for people to listen to them, and they still don't listen to them. They did that documentary because they didn't like it that people were saying that their dad was just as culpable as their mother. And people are still saying that their dad is just as culpable as their mother, even after watching it and knowing that that's what they wanted. And so it's like, you're not even treating them like a human being. You're listening to them say things and you're just letting it pass you by. And now nobody's talking about that documentary anymore. And that's like the general pattern is people talk about it for like 2 weeks. They act like they care, but they really don't, because if they did, they would do something more than post a couple videos about it on TikTok and then move on. Like they would actually know something about how these things happen, and they still don't know anything.
Yeah.
They got an author arrested in Australia for CSAM for a book she wrote. You don't even know what CSAM is. If you think that that book was that's like honestly insulting to anyone who's ever been in a situation like that before, that you would think that that's what that is. Like, it's like honestly shocking how little people know. Like, it's because all the information now is out there. It's not like you couldn't know. You just
Yeah.
don't want to know. And so overall, the TikTok that I posted was it was a clip of Walker talking about in an interview right after season 1 aired, where he was saying it was still pretty new at the time then to him, like being recognized a lot and things like that. It was like literally like a week after the show ended. And so it was still like something that didn't happen very as often as it does now to him. But
Hmm.
at the time he was saying that he said he was fine. He loves when people come up to him and talk to him. That is still true. He still says that. Um, but he was saying, the thing I don't like is when people just like watch you
Hmm.
and like from far away. And the host was like, yeah, like gawking is like something else entirely. Like instead of like standing there and watching. And the thing that made me want to post that was there was this post that was going around of um I figured out later on just from like context clues that it was him on vacation with his family at like Universal Studios in Florida or something, like somewhere warm. And because there were other pictures that other fans took with him that actually came up to him and talked to him.
Yeah.
But it was a video of somebody just following him around the theme park and like just recording him. And the video that like fans of his were like memifying was him looking right at the person that's recording him, like obviously like upset
Hmm.
and not happy at all, as you wouldn't be. Like that's a scary, honestly scary situation to be in because you don't know what they're going to do, especially when you're at like a freaking theme park with your family, including like extended family, like probably cousins and stuff like that that have nothing to do with anything. Um, that's just, you don't know what that person's going to do. And it's just an unsettling feeling to know that, like, to have somebody just like following you around and like recording everything you do. Like,
Yeah.
you can't really be upset like you want to because then they're just going to post that video of you being upset on the internet to try to make you look bad. Um, and it's just that's just a very uncomfortable feeling to be like watched all the time. And I've seen other videos of him and the other cast members like that, and other like child stars and stuff like that before. But it's just like the overall idea of like, how does somebody do that? Like, how do you see, and like, there are a lot of videos like that of him when he went to like Disney World or Disneyland like a year ago when he was in LA for like casting stuff for season 2. There are all these pictures and videos of him walking around Disneyland with his family, and you could see like his other siblings in like the background of these videos and pictures that people were taking of him. And it's just like I can like maybe psychologically understand like how that happens, but I almost like don't even want to think about it too much because it's such a dehumanizing way to look at somebody.
Yeah.
Because it's literally treating them like they're a toy, like that you can play with, that they're not like they're not like a person. And like Becky said that recently on Thread. She was talking about how child actors would have an easier time, or it would be like a less traumatizing job if people remembered that they were human and didn't treat them like dolls that they were playing with. But like genuinely, if you're at like a theme park and you see somebody there with like their family, their friends, whoever, and you decide to like follow them around and record them, um, that's a very, you're like treating them like they're not really a person, because it's not like those people that are doing that couldn't come up to him and like, take a picture or talk to him or something. It's like they don't want to.
Hmm.
They think it's like more fun to like follow them around. And like that picture, that very short video of him where he like looks right at the camera and then looks away and obviously looks like very unhappy and also nervous. You can see like another family member of his like standing right by him. And when I watched that, I was like, why would you ever take this and then post it on the internet? Like, what makes you want to show people that you did this? You obviously don't have any you don't have any like shame or bad feelings about what you were doing. You don't see anything wrong with what you were doing because you're now sharing it with the other people online that are fans of his. And they're turning it into like memes and jokes online. And I'm like, this is so weird that they're treating that this way. Because I'm like, you're stalking him. Like, that's stalking. When you're following somebody around in public and filming and recording them when they don't know you and you know them, and you're watching their every move like that, that's like basically stalking somebody around in the public eye. And it's like, he's just at a theme park during his free time with his family trying to enjoy himself, and you ruined it. Like, let's not pretend like you didn't. You absolutely ruined that experience for him. Because how can you enjoy being there when you can when you're watching people following you around like this, and now you're just thinking about, what do I do to, like, do I tell somebody that this is going on because I don't want to stress somebody else out in my family? I want everyone else to have a nice time. But if I don't say something and they do something, that could be worse. And it's just that whole back and forth sort of stuff. Like, they shouldn't have to deal with that. They should be able to go to a theme park with their friends or anywhere else and be fine. And that's like the stuff that I think is worth it to talk about with child stars, is like how people look at them like they're their character, and they like, and they will tell them like, I don't want you to treat me this way, but they just don't listen. And I'm not sure what they can do, because like the thing that made me think of with Walker especially is, maybe not every child actor does this kind of stuff, but all of the like update accounts for him that post all these things all the time, they would know about this because of course they have like all of his videos and stuff saved. But his first TikTok account that he had that got deleted because it got banned weirdly after the show aired, like right after the first season was done airing last year. That I remember before it disappeared, I went through and watched, he only had like 10 videos on there, but still I watched all the ones that he had on there, and a lot of them were from before he was like, before Percy Jackson came out, and his persona was a lot bigger. And so the first video he ever posted on there in 2022 was him duetting like an edit where somebody was editing like videos of him and his friend Momo as if they were like a couple. And he saw that video, duetted it with Momo sitting right next to him, and he wrote on the screen, "You guys know that I can see this, right?" And I was like, good boy for doing that. You're 13 years old at that time. I'm glad you already know that that treatment is not okay. And so the point I'm trying to make is that there is no way that anyone who's a super huge fan of his, even if you're a teenager, doesn't know that he doesn't like that. Yeah. He doesn't like it. The very first thing he ever told any of you really in like on the internet like that was that he doesn't like that. That was him like trying to set some sort of a boundary with his fans, being like, I don't like it when you guys speculate about me and my real life friends. I don't like it when there's this crossover between my private life and my public life. And so if you still talk about that stuff and speculate about him and the other actors, or just talk about like his siblings, his family in like a public way like that, you're hearing him say, I don't want you to talk like this, and you're doing it anyway. Yeah. He's asking you to do something, and you're saying, I don't care, because I want to be able to like use you in this way. And it's like, that doesn't feel very nice. Yeah. And it's just, that's the stuff that I mean by like, they're not treated like they're human, and like people don't treat children like they're human in general. So I suppose that's not surprising. But it is a much more intense experience when they're in the public eye like this, because a lot more people are perceiving them. A lot more people are watching everything they do. It's hard to control what people say about you. Anyone can say anything about you on the internet, and there's nothing that you can do to really stop it. If you like acknowledge it, sometimes that makes it worse, because then you're bringing more attention to it and just creates more people doing more of those things. But it's just, it's hard. Like, I want kids like him to be able to go out in public with their friends or their family or whatever, and be able to do that without being worried about what's going to happen. Because they're still kids. Like, they can't go anywhere. They can't go anywhere or do anything. They don't have like real, rights or protections or anything. He's just a normal kid. And so it's like, when he's not filming or anything like that, he's just a normal kid like anybody else. And so like, what is he supposed to do if things like that happen? There isn't that much that he can do. And And that's just I don't know like why people put stars like that in that position, because that's why a lot of child actors like disappear
Mhm.
into like the universe somewhere when they get to be like 18 or 19 years old. Like what was it that I was talking to you about where um oh, one of the other like TikTok interview clips that Issa sent me was an actor. I don't remember his name, but he was an actor. I recognized him, and he had kids that acted on set as well. And he was talking about how um, when you grow up as a kid on set, like in productions, you can kind of become inadvertently spoiled because
Mhm.
you have an assistant that just like does things for you. And so when you're a kid, you just get used to other people doing things for you.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be interesting to think about of like for people that didn't grow up like that and then suddenly are in that environment. That would be really weird to
Yeah.
watch people just like be used to somebody just doing stuff for them. Like I would feel bad asking anyone to do anything for me like that. But it was him talking about it because he was saying when he was on set with his kids, he would still parent them and would tell them like if you want to go, like if you want some food or something, go get it yourself, kind of
Mhm.
stuff, instead of so they wouldn't end up like that. And that's what that kind of thing this whole like surveillance weirdness that they kind of go through reminds me of, is
Yeah.
that like um either end up like somebody who's like super um quote unquote mature and like a little adult and super parentified because they can like handle everything themselves because they were put in like adult situations and took responsibility of it, or
Mhm.
they have zero life skills whatsoever because other people did everything for them and then they turn 18 and don't know how to do anything at all. It's one or the other. It's there's like no in between. Um, and so on top of that, like imagine when you are out there in the world and trying to be like a normal person, people watching everything you do, it just makes it all worse. Like one thing I have to mention, because this is not a new issue, like
Mhm.
apps like TikTok definitely make it worse, of course. But Mary Kay and Ashley Olsen, when they were in high school and stuff, Spencer Pratt, the way that Spencer Pratt got a lot of his money is that he would be at parties where they were there and he would take videos of them at those parties and then sell them to tabloids. That's how he made most of his money. And so, like when people were feeling bad for him and Heidi when they lost things in like the hurricane, I think I was like, do not feel bad for these people. They are horrific human beings. They recorded teenage stars just trying to be themselves, teenagers at a party, when they didn't think anybody would be recording them, and sold them to TMZ for money. That's how they made money, was doing stuff like that. That's disgusting. And that was a long time ago. That was probably like 2005-ish times,
Mhm.
somewhere in there. And so this is not like a new thing that people have done with child stars. I'm just like sick of it happening. Like I'm just sick of it. I'm just sick of watching child stars be obviously treated badly. Like you can actively see it happening in front of you. And then people act like they're so surprised why they're traumatized by everything they experienced in their life later on. And it's like, what do you think was going on when this stuff was happening?
Well, and people, it's so weird how easily people lose their humanity. I made a friends only post about this because I know people are gonna say some stupid shit when I say this, but the Harambe kid, I'm still like feeling something about how people dehumanize that kid and continue to dehumanize him over a meme to the point where this kid is 13. Like
Mm-hmm.
my son watches Ryan Trahan videos every once in a while and stuff, you know? Like he's watching YouTube. He's learning about culture through young people's lenses. And it's not going to be long before these kids, like we know that the Percy kids are seeing it. We know the stars are seeing it. We hear after the fact how many of them were affected by things that were said on the about tabloids, and now there's update accounts on Twitter, and like the tabloids are publishing 24/7. It's not just, you go to this grocery store and you have, what was it, like Newsweek and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's inescapable. It's really inescapable, and for these kids to grow up knowing people are dehumanizing them, it makes me think. Rebecca Black, I know, has said a lot about the way she grew up, because she grew up memeified. You know, all of us talking about that music video, because back then YouTube was a wonder, and it's like, how did this little girl get this full music video? I venture to guess a lot of people's reaction towards Friday was jealousy of like, how did she get this when I could do this so much better?
Mm-hmm.
But it was just because we all didn't know. Like, literally anyone could post to YouTube. You just get the right production value. You could have done the exact same shit as her.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the story with that was just like her parents just spent the money to make that because they knew that it would make her happy. That was literally all it was. She was just like a middle school kid.
Yeah.
And that is like that's what I mean by like people don't treat children like they're human beings. Like they wouldn't treat anybody else that way.
And, you know, people talk shit about Katy Perry right now, but she's the only person that was somewhat nice to Rebecca Black in that era, because they had that whatever Saturday Night song that was, you know, she put her in the music video for it and made her the cool girl. Like, that's literally the only person that was being nice to her in that era. And that's so sad to think. Like, you look at Rebecca Black now, and she is a very colorful adult, and you have to wonder how much she went through, like, personally, just over that. I know she's talked about it here and there, but, like, there's no way any of us can imagine having the entire internet dogpile on us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and since we talk about Percy Jackson stuff, I just want kids to almost think about, like, do you want to be a part of a kid's trauma?
Yeah.
Like you? Because it's like this show's only been on for a little over a year, and in that time just the amount of things that have happened online is like already very overwhelming, just with Walker. Like people following him and his family around, posting all of this stuff, posting photos of his friends in his tiny ass hometown that don't have anything to do with anything. People doxed his phone number and were texting him to try to find out when they were filming for season 2. And
scripts, right? Like,
yeah, and that's just the stuff that he said publicly. There's probably other things that have happened, obviously, that they wouldn't post about publicly. Those are just things that he has brought up. Like, he literally just brought up in an interview, and during the interview, you see, like, Aryan and Leah look at him like, when he's saying, like, oh yeah, somebody texted me, and they both look at him like, what? Like, somebody texted you? Somebody found your phone number and texted you? Like, how did they find his phone number? I still get freaked out by that whenever I think about that. And it's like, would you want somebody doing that? Like, would you want entire accounts dedicated to your family on like Instagram, posting, like, tagging you a million times a day and following you around whenever you're in public, and trying to do anything to get your attention, and finding your phone number, trying to find your house, like trying to do anything to find you? That's just so uncomfortable, and it makes I can only imagine that it would make every other relationship you have very difficult, even like your friends and family, because like, why would you, because it's like a whole thing to bring him along to anything, because there's so much more planning. Because it's not just like, oh, we can go to Disney World. It's like, well, if we go to Disney World with Walker, we have to make plans in case some of his fans start harassing him when he's there. Yeah. And it's like, why would you want to do that to, like, him or any of the other kids, for that matter? I've seen pictures of, like, Charlie with a girlfriend he had when he was much younger, and I'm like, why are these on the internet?
Yeah, why are we all looking at this?
Like, why is this on the internet? Why are you speculating what kind of boyfriend he was? What is happening? What is going on? What is going on? Like, what is happening? I get so freaked out when I see those pictures.
Yeah, like, to give you guys an idea, like, you can have little crushes on celebrity. This was a joke. It started off as a joke, but there was a very famous Sharks player named Logan Couture, and it was my joke, like, because I want a Couture jersey, but like, it just says the name Couture, it's not like embellished and stuff. And so it was like my little joke. And then I actually developed a little crush on him and stuff. I did not know what that man's wife looked like until I went to his farewell game. And I was like, wow, his wife is hella hot. Like I was expecting somewhat of that, but like, wow, she is smoke show. And it should honestly be like that. You know, I remember even as a kid, I was a weirdo kid, like Backstreet Boys. I didn't like them when everybody else did because I was like, all these kids are married. This feels weird.
Yeah, like I honestly resent the fact that I know the things that I do know about the cast of Percy Jackson and the Olympians because I don't want to know any of this stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
know it from just like scrolling on Instagram because it just like shows up and I'm like, I don't want to know this about them. I don't want to know what their parents do or what they look like or the fact that they've dated people in the past like with Charlie or anyone else. I don't want to know this stuff. I don't want to know. I really wish I didn't know that this stuff could still be private because it is their private life. It has nothing to do with what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
I hate that this stuff is just out there and people feel like because they're decided to I guess like the thing I wanted to say to kind of end this discussion is acting is like kind of like an insular sort of job in a way. Like you're on set every day. They're on set for like 10 hours, 10 to 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. They basically spend, when they're filming, they spend every waking moment basically on set. And even when they're not on set and they're like have off days, you usually hang out with people that you spend time with on set. Like when I did stage crew stuff in high school, we would spend time with people we were doing stage crew stuff with on like the weekends and stuff when we had the days off from stage crew production stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how you are. It's because it's fun doing that stuff together. You're doing something together and you want to spend time together because you're all enjoying yourself doing it when it's a good environment. And so it's like this insular thing where you're all working really hard doing this stuff and it's really rewarding. And it's like a delayed thing where you, like months later you get to see like the payoff for all of that hard work that you've done. But it is a thing where you spend most of your time just around this like small group of people doing all of this work. And so it's not like you're like on a stage like a musician or something in front of a ton of people. You're just in a like yeah, there are people on set watching you when you're working, but it's not that many people honestly. And and so it's just like a thing of like they're not actually choosing to be public figures that way. Like yeah, they're good at acting and they're putting themselves out there and the movies that they're in or shows that they're in, a lot of people watch them, but they haven't made that same decision like other stars can do in other jobs where they're actively making themselves like a figure to be like idolized that way in the same sort of way because the work that you do with this sort of work is much more like solitary in a way. Like you have to do it. You have to remember the lines. You have to get what you need to get out of that scene. It's up to like you're doing it because you want to get the scene right, but it's up to you to do it. And outside of the people that are there when you're filming, nobody else sees it for a long time. And so it feels especially hard for people to think that because they decided to be an actor at this big level, that they have somehow like signed this contract that everything else they do is just up for public consumption. When they haven't. They just haven't.
Yeah, and I don't know, like there's an aspect of this. We didn't grow up in the era where like our celebrity crushes were this accessible, you know? Like it felt very untouchable. Even to be a part of a fandom before the internet was big, it was like you had to actually try, you know? And now it's as simple as I just like the same pictures as this group of people, and we all are friends because of it. Like it's strange, but yeah. So I we can get a little bold behind our phones, and they deserve privacy. And to some extent, there's part of me, like the introverted me, that understands these kids, you know, like thinking, oh, well, I'm too nervous to ever go up to him. Why would he talk to me? Like, I'll just snap this picture from far away. But I would venture to guess that, like, if you really are kind of hovering in his vicinity for a while, there's going to be a moment where he does look more open to fan interactions, where maybe someone caught his eye and he's already taking a picture. Like, there's going to be a moment. And it doesn't seem like he's totally shut off to them, you know?
He actually really likes it. That's
Yeah.
part of the thing that's so weird is that in almost every interview I've ever seen of him, he talks about, like, I want fans to come up to me. I
Mhm.
want fans to talk to me. I love talking to them. Like, there was some interview he did recently where he said that a fan came up to him when he was at, like, the season one premiere in New York, and they talked for 45 minutes about Percy Jackson. He was like, that was the best conversation of my entire life. Like, that was like a literal quote that he said in that interview. He loves talking about this stuff with fans because
Yeah.
he's one of us. And so it's like, I understand if you're shy, because I am a shy person too,
Mhm.
that where you don't want to come up to somebody like that. If like if I ever saw a celebrity, I wouldn't want to do that either, because I would feel bad, like, bothering them, and
Mhm.
also just would feel weird talking to them at all. But
Yeah.
it's more the, like, the impulse people have is to, like, take a picture, or especially take video, purposely just to share it with the internet. That
Yeah.
is the only reason you're doing that, is because you want to share it with the internet to get, like, attention from other fans, so that you look like better or whatever, because you had this, like, interaction or whatever with him, like the person that everybody is idolizing. And so
Mhm.
people are going to come to you because you got this thing that other people want. That's and so you're not even, like, really doing it because you like them, you're interested in them, you want to, like, be around them. You're doing it to use them to get, like, your own personal clout and attention. You're
Mhm.
just using them. It's not even necessarily about them most of the time. It's about what you can use with them to get out of them. And so it's just another person exploiting them.
Pretty much.
And so it's like, can we stop doing that,
Yeah.
please? Like, it's not going to stop, but I just hate watching it all the time, because I know way too much about how I know that that stuff is really hard to deal with. Like, of course it is. Like, nobody would deal with that. Like, especially after the, like, whole Epic the Musical thing. Like, imagine just having comments like that all the time.
Yeah.
That's what people like them get all the time. Like, no wonder why Walker is literally never online. I would be actively terrified of the internet if that is what the internet was like every time I was on it. I
Mhm.
didn't want to be on the internet during that, like, month or whatever that stuff was going on, where it was really intense, because it's demoralizing and traumatizing that every time you log on to the internet, it's just full comments, hundreds of comments of people saying that you're a horrible, ugly bitch that should die.
Mhm.
Like, that gets to you after a while. I,
Yeah.
like, spent, like, a couple weeks there crying every single day when that was going on, because would get overwhelmed by it every single day, and that was only happening to me for, like, 3 weeks.
Mhm.
That happens to them all the time.
Yeah.
Like, that has to affect them somehow.
Yeah. Oh. Um. Yeah. Trying to think what else I could say about that, but that's pretty much it. It's just like, don't be weird. Like, come up to them, but like, I do want to say and give the caveat, because if there's one thing the Chapel Roan, like her getting mad about fan interactions, it wasn't about fan interaction. It wasn't the fact that fans come up to her. It was like, hey, I'm obviously like in the middle of something and you're bugging me. Or wasn't there someone who came up to her while she was crying?
Yeah, the interactions that Chaperone made during the interview, that a lot of just terrible people acted like she was being overdramatic and weird. Like, I was like, you guys are literally acting out the abuse dynamic
Mm-hmm.
right now by acting like she's, like, asking for too much. The interaction she was talking about was somebody doxed her dad's phone number
Yeah.
and his address, and, like, showed up at her dad's house. And then, like, closely after that, she went to, like, a bar where some of her friends were that she knew before she was famous. Somebody came up to her and just kissed her,
Oh, yeah.
without even asking or saying anything to her. Literally just came up to her and just kissed her on the mouth out of nowhere. And then the other interaction she had was when she was walking down the street when she was on tour, sobbing while talking to her therapist on the phone. And some fans came up to her to try to ask her for an autograph.
Mm-hmm.
And she obviously said no. And then they got upset at her and were, like, mad about it. And it's like, you're. It's the same thing I was saying before. Like, you see somebody walking down the street on the phone crying, and you are so caught up with seeing them that you don't think about what's going on. Like genuinely, like most of the issues I see with Gen Z and Gen Alpha is that they are constantly thinking about what can I do to go viral on the internet, because they think that that will get them something.
Hmm.
Because that's the only reason why you would like not notice the like obvious things that somebody is going through and leave them alone when you see somebody crying like that, is because that is like overriding your thoughts of like, oh, I could post this online and get a lot of attention,
Yeah.
um, and become like an influencer or just get a lot of attention. And it makes you like not see somebody. It makes you see somebody as an opportunity instead of seeing somebody like a person.
Hmm.
And it's like it's and if, obviously it's going to bother both of us the most when it's a child, because they didn't know what was going to happen when they decided to do this. Like
Yeah.
they just decided to do this because they like doing it. They had no conceptualization of like this sort of thing when they started doing all of this stuff. They couldn't have. They were too young to
Hmm.
know completely. In some way, they're still too young to completely conceptualize all of it, because they're still teenagers.
Yeah.
And so, um, yeah, it's just, I wish that people would, I don't know, just stop that. Stop dehumanizing them so much, because it makes it really hard for them to exist and do this job. And they love doing it, but I want them to keep loving it without it feeling like an abusive relationship that they're in.
Exactly. And I'm going to say it because summer's coming up. If there's ever any like, oh, leaked these kids partying pictures, I'm going to ignore the fuck out of them because they're kids. I was drinking when I was 18. I was going out to parties. Like, let them do it. It's a part of their development.
Yeah, if anything, I would like message the person and be like, take that shit down.
Yeah.
But other than that, I would just, that was the only thing I could ever think of to say to something like that. Like, why is that any of our business? They're kids. That's what every kid does.
I hope they're off doing kid things. I hope they're making stupid mistakes. That's what they should be doing.
Yeah, they should be having fun. That's what you do at that. You're supposed to do that at that age. So I hope that they are doing that. In between before, they have to be like serious and start getting ready for this stuff again.
Yeah.
I want them to have like those nice breaks so you need that stuff. You need breaks like that to do fun things. And then you can go back and work and focus, and it doesn't feel like work anymore because you got to have a break, but they have to actually have a break first.
Yeah, and especially because they're going to go back and film Titans first. Like,
Yeah.
let's not forget that.
Yeah. That's like the main thing when that friggin' website posted about it. I was like, they do not have time to get ready for Titan's Curse yet. Jesus Christ. I was like, give these children more time. For the love of God, Disney, give them more time. I was like, I really don't. I was like shocked because I was like, I don't want that to be true, but I also have a hard time believing it would be true because I can't see this production like pushing them like that. They only stopped filming season like 5 months ago to already be like having them be filming already.
Yeah,
And
like they need more of a break. They're gonna get emotionally wrecked filming this next scene, just like we're all
yeah,
gonna get emotionally wrecked watching it.
yeah, like Walker, Leah, Charlie. That's that's going to be very hard for the three of them to film. Every single scene, basically.
Walker's gonna have to film the like "you killed my sister" stuff with Nico. Like,
Yeah,
and the
he's gonna
fandom
have to film. He's gonna have to film Thalia, like screaming at him for the entire book. He's gonna have to film like the stuff going on with Zoe and Artemis and stuff, and Annabeth being gone, having dreams about her being tortured by Luke, and then also the stuff going on with Nico and Bianca and everything else. Like that's a like I'm not exaggerating. There's like not a scene in that entire book where Percy just gets like a nice, funny, happy scene really. Like even like the one scene that people think of is like the dam scene, but that's them laughing after a 12-year-old just got electrocuted to death. And so it's like it's a nice scene for them to like, like let out all of that like grief in a way that makes them laugh again, but that's still not really still not really a fun scene. And even like Walker in interviews, years, like last year, he said in the interview that he did talking about Thalia, he said, like, I hope there are some scenes that aren't, the way he put it was like, I hope there are some scenes that are nice.
Yeah.
When he was talking about Thalia, because he remembers what scenes like are like with Thalia.
Hmm.
And he was like, I hope there's some where we kind of get along, so it's not all like that. And I
Yeah.
was like, yes, you poor child. She's gonna just be yelling at you as your character, for an entire season. How fun.
So, we have book stuff. We finished Battle of the Labyrinth this week. Oh my gosh, yeah. So, um, let's see. Where we left off was right after basically Pan dies. And so they go back into the maze and they start heading towards New York again because they want to get back to camp before Lupin is over. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything. So, I mean, it goes by pretty quickly, the labyrinth portion, and then they call in the Pegasi, who are just like fully ready to take them from Times Square to camp. Um, Rachel has to leave them at this point because, of course, she can't go back, but she does reveal my dad's a land developer. He's like literally the person that's killing Pan. I'm really sorry.
Yeah. And of course, Percy, the obvious thing, like, it's not your fault what your dad does.
Let's see. So they take Pegasi back to camp. We find that out. We find out that Percy has Rachel's number now permanently memorized, and I could see that being like, I mean, just it was there, you know. He probably got distracted by there's something here. Okay, let me read it like 10 million times before it washed off.
Yeah. And honestly, like, the part with Rachel and Percy, um, like, the only point I would make about that is that Percy needs somebody like that.
Hmm.
Um, Like, you just need somebody that, like, knows about what's happening, but they're not really involved. So
Yeah.
you can just relax. And that's really what she's kind of like. Like, she knows everything, but she's not a part of this world at all.
Hmm.
If he's gonna, like, survive all this stuff, you need, like what we were just saying, you need breaks sometimes. And
Yeah.
she's somebody that gives him a break. Um, he
Yeah. And
really
I mean,
needs that.
the feeling stuff is definitely in here. Like there's little hints that she has feelings towards Percy. There's the um like he realizes that she's not happy with his like, oh, I guess I'll see you soon. And so he's like, oh, I'll say it a little bit more enthusiastically. I mean, I'd like that. And
Hmm.
once he says, I kind of memorized it about her phone number, she starts smiling.
Hmm.
And that's definitely like, oh, he's remembering me.
Yeah,
Um,
like, when I read this scene again, I was like, it's just nice to read somebody who just likes him.
yeah,
Like, who just likes him and thinks he's a nice kid, and that's as far as it's going. You need somebody like that sometimes in the
yeah.
middle of all of this craziness.
The impression that I get of Rachel, and especially like as a direct opposition to her rich parents, is I get that she really wants to be a starving artist. Like she wants it so bad. She's one of those children that think art only comes from pain and misery
Hmm.
and suffering and poverty. And I want to be an artist that tells me that's not true. Like it's not true. You know, sometimes art is born from privilege, even, but it looks like a bunch of things. Sometimes it is pouring your sadness and pain into something, and sometimes it's pouring your happiness too.
Hmm. Either way, I think Rachel's nice because she's not connected to anything else.
Mhm.
She just met him very randomly, and she just thinks he's nice
Yeah,
and just wants to spend time with him, not because he's like the prophecy kid or Poseidon's child or anything like that, just because he's just Percy and he seems like a nice guy. And now they're going to be going to school together for the next year, and so at least he would have like a singular friend
yeah,
there, because he doesn't have a lot. Like, even in the latest book that just came out last year, there's a part of Percy talking about how he doesn't really celebrate his birthday because he because most of the kids at camp that are his friends are gone, like he does in this book, but it's when he's like 18. And he says it's the same way, that he never really has like normal friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is like somebody who just goes to his high school that will want to like spend time with him when he's in class where he doesn't have nobody. That's a plus. And so like
Yeah.
if you read that stuff, I just like want people to see that Rachel's just a nice girl,
Mm-hmm.
that just is like thrown into the stuff and just thinks that Percy is a nice kid and feels bad because he talks about dying all the time and as if it's nothing. And I honestly think she just cares about him like that. Like, just notices that he's in this crazy stuff and almost is like, does nobody else ever bring up how crazy this stuff is to you?
Yeah, because
Kind of stuff.
we've already hinted at where this love triangle goes. Like, it's not like she bows out in a way where she's never coming back. She doesn't want to be friends with him. She bows out in a way, if I remember correctly, where it's like, you know what, you two make more sense. That's perfectly fine. If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I don't even know if she necessarily is like even like quote, like a real competition or whatever. It's just like she has whatever she feels about him, but I'm not even sure she ever really fully even brings it up with him because
Yeah,
it's just like she knows there's all these other things going on with him.
yeah,
She just likes spending time with him. That's it.
exactly. So they get to camp, and Chiron is waiting along with Silenus, and Silenus immediately wants to get on Grover's case. You've been gone, what was it, like 2 or 3 weeks? And at this point, like, your searcher's license is revoked. They try to just quickly tell him what happened, but he doesn't believe it. And um, Chiron basically is like, you gotta go away. My camp's under attack. Like, we'll get back to this later. And so we find out what they set up in order to make sure they've secured this area where the monsters can potentially get in. So it's over by Zeus's fist in the campgrounds, and so we have around the entrance of the labyrinth, the Hephaestus kids put razor wire, pits filled with pots of Greek fire, rows of sharpened sticks to deflect the damage, and then they have catapults. The Ares cabin is starting a phalanx formation in the front. Dryads, like tree nymphs, essentially, are arming themselves with bows, and the satyrs have wooden cudgels and shields. The Athena cabin has a command tent. Dionysus's kids are giving people refreshments, and the Athena kids, or sorry, the Aphrodite kids he mentions are even like going around straightening armor and stuff. So it's literally all hands on deck. Everybody's kind of going to their assigned roles, what makes the most sense for their parents' domain, and both Percy and Chiron are looking at this like, I mean, it's impressive, but it's not going to be enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this was Chiron being Percy's dad that
Mm-hmm.
always like gets me all emotional and stuff, where he talks to him about Nico, that he knows that Nico is a Hades child now,
Mm-hmm.
and he just kind of looks at him, and when he says it, and Percy immediately is like, I'm sorry for not telling you, and da da da, and he doesn't even like really finish the sentence he's saying, because Chiron's like, yeah, I know you didn't want to say it because you felt responsible for what happened. And I was just like, Chiron literally saying exactly why he didn't tell him. And it's just very sweet that he has somebody like Chiron like that in this world that is trying to like look out for him always, and is just like, yeah, I'm not upset with you, my like sweet child. I understand why you didn't tell me about Nico, but he basically just ends it by trying to say, like, you need to, like, the only way we're going to make it through all of this stuff is if we're honest with each other, while all of this craziness is going on. But I love anything where Chiron gets to be his dad, because that is him being his actual dad. Of telling him, like, yeah, I understand why you didn't tell me about Nico, and it's absolutely fine. Like, he spent the whole book worried that Chiron would be mad at him.
Mm-hmm.
For he kept talking about it, at least in the beginning parts of the book. I can't tell Chiron about this because he would be upset with me. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, he's not, you sweet little child. He's not upset with you at all. He understands why you did that because you felt like it was somehow your fault, and it wasn't.
Hmm.
Um, but I just always love moments like that. It's like, yeah, it's always nice that Chiron is very consistently like one of the only people that remembers that Percy is a person,
Yeah.
um, and treats him like that, and isn't just like treat him like something else. Like this entire book has people projecting all over him, and Chiron never does that.
Yeah.
He's
Um,
not perfect, but he does remember that Percy is a, and he obviously cares a lot about him.
yeah. He's one of two dad figures. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely felt the dad moment later, but
Yeah.
we'll get there. So the fighting starts, and monsters are pouring out of this entrance of the labyrinth. So we have Lystragonians coming out. Eventually, the Dracaeni come out in full battle armor. Um, I mean, there's we could go a little bit into it, but not really. I mean, I don't want to go through all of the people dying. Eventually,
Yeah.
Nico joins in, and Nico uses more power than he's ever used before, kind of similar, calling back to Percy in the volcano. But what ends up happening that like really is a problem is Campy shows up, and so Percy and Annabeth decide to take Campy on. Chiron is kind of helping from the back with his bow and arrow. He gets 3 shots in her chest that do absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And Percy and Annabeth eventually get tackled. And it's when they get tackled that Miss O'Leary shows up. And I had a feeling Miss O'Leary was going to come along at the first mention of a hellhound. And it wasn't, it was an enemy hellhound, but I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I feel like Miss O'Leary is going to come in and do some work. Um, Miss O'Leary is coming along with Daedalus and Briares from earlier. And it's kind of a cute little moment because there's like an Uncle Iroh quote that I love. It's always best to believe in yourself that having help from a friend. Like, I forgot what the exact quote is. It's something of that effect. Like, having help from a friend really like will bring you back out of it, and that's what's happening with Briares and Tyson. Is that he he like walked away from the group and he didn't join them immediately, but Tyson's voice. Tyson's like, "Oh, you're my hero, and I'm waiting for you to do something and save us. Come on, save us!" Like that was replaying in his head.
Mm-hmm. And he came back and was trying to find his way back on his own, by himself, in the labyrinth, which is not an easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
He just couldn't figure it out on his own, but he was trying on his own without anybody else like talking to him or telling him. He just changed his mind. Um,
Yeah.
one point overall I wanted to make about this whole battle thing is number one, to bring up Calypso again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she kept him on her island for 2 weeks, and he basically leaves her island, and then like a day later all of this happens. So if she hadn't kept him there all that time, what do you think would have happened? Something much better than this. Because basically what's happening in this chapter is that they don't have time.
Yeah.
They don't have time. They don't have time to even try to find somebody else that could help them. And there's a lot of people that they could try to ask. Like Chiron could try to pull in favors. People like some people in the world do like Percy because he treats them like humans when other people don't.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot of different possibilities they could have tried to try to get help, but because it happened so quickly, they don't have any time to do that. Like imagine what they would have gotten done if she didn't waste 2 weeks of their time keeping him
Mm-hmm.
there. And that's like the point I try to make with Calypso. People like her is that like they're so selfish that they put their needs first, that she's not even thinking about like how many things this child needs to do for other people, that like hundreds and thousands of people's lives are going to be affected if she just keeps him on her island, and she doesn't care. And this is like an example of this. All this stuff happens, and she actively made it worse. She's not the reason why it happened, but she makes it much worse by keeping him there for way too long. just because she wants him there. That's just despicable, honestly. But the this chapter was just, oh my god, it took me so long to read this chapter because I kept like, I could like feel myself not really reading what I was reading, because this chapter is literally just Percy running around with his head cut off while everybody that he loves almost dies, like back to back. That is the entire chapter. Like every time Nico does anything, I'm like, you're 11 years old. Like every time he does something, I'm like, you are 11. And you almost just like burned yourself like Percy did with your own powers because of trying too hard, because you're trying to protect this camp that you don't think even wants you there.
Yeah.
Sweet little baby child. Like they want you there. We'll talk about that later, but like he's doing all of that thinking that nobody at camp would even want him to be around, and almost killing himself when he's 11.
Yeah.
Because he's trying to do that. But it's just the point before you go into like what happens as literally, it's just every person that Percy loves is just, he doesn't even have time to find out if they're actually okay, because there's like another thing that happens. The one point of this I wanted to point out was that Chiron and him right before it happens, or as it's starting to happen, they're talking. Chiron's telling him, you have to sit back and wait because you are the one that can like save everybody who's in like the worst position, like who are about to die. You can save them because you have the most power, so you have to sit here and wait to see like who is in the most danger first and go to that person, and then figure out who else is about to die and go to that. He's literally going to people that are just about to die over and over and over again. That's horrified.
Yeah.
That he's had that, but that is what you have to do. But I guess the point I wanted to make about this whole battle is that I feel like there's this idea with this camp that they're like training for a war or something, like that they ever expected this sort of thing to happen. None of them ever expected this to happen. These kids are at this camp training this way to survive monster attacks when they're not at camp. They're training so that they can survive their life until they get old enough where the monsters leave them alone when they get too old, and they can fight too well that they don't come after them anymore. They never thought there would be a war. They never thought they would be attacked this way. They never thought that they would actually have to do this kind of thing. And they especially never thought that it would happen to them at their camp. Like, it is supposed to feel like the biggest betrayal in the world that this is happening at this camp. And when I read this, I was like, this is exactly what it's like when you have a violent person living in your house. Like, this feeling, this is exactly what it feels like. And like, like, I love Rick and Becky so much for writing a story like this that it honestly, like, every time I think about it, I like want to cry about how they write stories like this where we don't have to trauma porn our life out, but they still write stories that make people feel a lot of empathy for people who experience things like Percy do, because like Percy in this story is 14. I had something similar like this happen when I was 14 in a very different way, but it was still, I've never worked on that memory yet in EMDR for it to like completely go away like that. But there was a time when I was 14, and if you don't want to hear anything about domestic violence stuff, I'll do this when I'm done talking about it. But there was a time when I was 14 when my dad was living with us again, and he tried to push my mom down the stairs. And my sister started screaming for me for help because I was the Percy in that situation. I was the one that was like their trump card that could get him to stop. And my sister called 911, and she was 12 because I was 14. She was 12 and was calling 911 because my dad was like staying at the top of the stairs with my mom and like threatening to push her down the stairs, which he usually wouldn't actually touch her like that, but he was this time. And so I came up to him and pushed him off of her twice. The first time he did it, he went to go do it again, and I pushed him off of him again and just looked at him, and I was like, and I literally screamed in his face, "Get the fuck out of this house." When I was 14, and he was like, "No, I don't want to leave." And I was like, "Fine, then I'll leave. Bye." And I like ran out of the house and just like started walking away. And of course my mom ran after me and like and we drove around in the car for a couple hours for coming back home. And my mom told me recently that after I ran out of the house and he realized that my sister called 911 on him, he begged my 12-year-old sister to lie to the police for him.
Oh my gosh.
And she did because she's 12.
Yeah.
And like of course she did. She was in 6th grade when this was happening because I was in 8th grade. But like that is this situation is that like that's how it feels every time somebody violent like that is doing things. Like your home is supposed to be where you're safe. They're supposed to be safe at this camp, and they're not. And Percy is the only one that can stop Luke and stop his people, and so he's having to see the worst stuff. Like my sister got to hide in her room when that was going on. I had to go out there and do that because I'm the one. And so when I was growing up, after that moment especially, whenever I would be out of the house, I would be like afraid of what was going on when I wasn't there, because if I wasn't there, then there was nobody there to stop him. If he did something like that, like I still now, like I live by myself. I don't even have any pets anymore because my 2 cats died last year. Nobody is in my apartment if I'm not here. But every single time I leave and I come back home, I get this feeling of dread when I'm about to walk into my apartment that something in there has gone wrong or there's something bad that's happening that I don't know about yet. And it's because that's how that kind of stuff affects you. And this like whole battle is a really good example of just how much of a like it feels very wrong to have something like this happening in a place where you're supposed to feel safe.
Yeah.
Like they're supposed to be safe at this camp. This is like the one place that they're supposed to be safe, and Lucas, all of these they all would have died. Hold on. There. Okay. But if they weren't able to, like, if Percy didn't burst in there and stop Luke when all of that happened, they all would have died.
Yeah.
Because they barely make it in this chapter when he's not there. Imagine if Kronos was there, if Luke was there they all would have just been dead, and that would have been the end of it. And like that, how do people still say anything nice about him?
No.
Like after I read this, I was like genuinely, how? Like how? I do not understand. I just, whatever. keep going. Hardly anything has happened yet in this horrible chapter.
So, what ends up actually like being the final blow that stops the battle is that Grover all of a sudden has the power of command. He's able to make the rest of the army panic. He just lets out this scream that, like, no, everybody's like, what the hell is happening? The monsters are dropping their weapons and running back into the labyrinth. And Juniper is the only one who's like, oh, I know exactly what that was. I know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then it goes into the whole thing with Daedalus. Like, this part was funny if you're in my head reading.
Yeah.
Because every time Daedalus said something, I was like, just die already. Like, I have no sympathy for you whatsoever. Just die.
Mm-hmm.
Like, genuinely die. The reason why, like, me reading a chapter like this, I was, like, reading it just being like, oh, let's just read every single child in this book series being traumatized horribly over and over and over again. That's all this chapter is when this battle is going on. And so I'm like, this is partly your fault. You let them do this.
Yep.
You literally just like laid on the ground and were just like, I don't want to try. I have all the power to stop this, but I'm just not going to do anything. And instead literally give the stuff over to the horrible person that wants to murder a bunch of children. And I'm just going to make it easier for him to do this. And then suddenly realize like, oh, I let him murder a bunch of children. That might not be a good idea. And it's like, I'm glad that you at least realized that like some shame like finally kicked in with you and made you go running because you didn't want like your last legacy to be like murdering every demigod child that was alive, basically. But it's also just like really fucking pathetic that it took you that long and it took you that far to do that. Like it took him so much work to realize like maybe I shouldn't like let these children be massacred because I have problems. And so the whole time they were talking about like figuring out what he was going to do, and then he finally decides I'll just die and the labyrinth will die with me, because I guess the point too with this whole thing is, as bad as this whole battle was with everyone Percy's ever loved almost dies,
Yeah.
including like Chiron at the very end, like him just blah, like him just like screaming when he sees that he thinks that Chiron might be dead.
Hmm.
It's just ridiculous, just one after the other. Like it would have continued on if they didn't get rid of the labyrinth. It's not like they actually like fully beat them. Like they beat them that part, but the army would have just kept coming
Hmm.
forever until they were all dead. And so the only reason it stops is because Daedalus finally realizes that he's a piece of shit and is like, maybe I should just die now. But at least he realizes that he's horrible and should probably go. Um, that's something that other people never realize.
Yeah, so he does take some accountability. What I can say about Daedalus, trying to be a little bit more objective at least, is I do feel like this is taking accountability in a way that what Luke does isn't, because Daedalus knows as soon as I get to that underworld, Minos is still a judge of the dead. I'm still gonna have to face the things I was afraid to face, but he's choosing to do it anyway. And Luke, his ending is a lot more like, I'm already losing. It's going to be worse if I go out the other way, isn't it? And so they're very different decisions. They're made with very different motivation, in my opinion.
Yeah,
And yeah,
it's much easier for Luke to die when he does it because he's already lost.
pretty much.
He's lost. He didn't think that they would ever beat him, but they did, you stupid bitch. And he has his dad on his side, who is constantly trying to make excuses for him, including in the last Olympian. And so he had to have known that, especially if he was what technically killed Kronos, that gives him like some things to say like that to try to have people be nicer to him in the afterlife. And so like he did it when it was like at the lowest cost, like to him, like he tried everything else. He tried to do his whole plan, and once he realized that it didn't work, he was like, well, I guess I can just kill myself now instead of having to live knowing that I failed, basically. And this is like the one thing that I can do that might like save myself a little bit, but it wasn't doing it because he actually realized that he was wrong or anything like that, because he's only doing it because he lost. Like the whole rest of the book, he's still doing all of that stuff. He's not, there's no like questioning of anything by him. It's just when he realizes that he lost is when he does it. If he hadn't lost, he wouldn't have changed his mind.
Yeah.
And like Daedalus realizes after those kids leave, like, what am I doing? Like him and Briareys both realize that on their own, and realize not because they like lost something necessarily, but they just realized like I should not do this anymore. But Luke never gets that far.
Yeah.
He just keeps going until he's like, well, they would probably do something really bad to me if I stayed alive, and they can't get too upset with me, right, if I kill Kronos, so why don't I just kill him? Since our plan didn't work anyway, so I might as well do that and leave. Goodbye.
Yeah. So, Daedalus calls over Nico, and basically, Minos had been trying to get Nico to take out Daedalus the entire time. A soul for a soul will trade Bianca's soul for his. And so Daedalus actually makes the offer. He goes to Nico, he says, we could do the soul for a soul thing, I'm ready to go. Like, and Nico actually says no. And he does help him pass though, and it's like not unaliving him. He just like helps his soul leave, and Percy is going to be the new owner of Miss O'Leary, and the labyrinth starts collapsing. Like they feel an earthquake underneath their feet at that moment, that Percy says, I'm sure, like, everywhere in the world would feel this earthquake because the labyrinth is that big.
Hmm. And it
Yep.
was finally gone. And that's what stops like Luke's army that's in that labyrinth, whatever was in there, is
Mhm.
gone now. Um,
Yeah,
and so
and
they at
this
least
is
get a little
only
bit of a
a
break.
temporary. But yeah, this is only temporary because
Hmm.
it's only the monsters that were in the labyrinth,
Hmm.
and these monsters regenerate.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it's like you stopped them for now. You did take out the entrance, so they're gonna have to figure out another way to make it into camp if they want to. But like, that's not it, and everybody knows it's not it.
Yeah, and I think at the beginning part of this chapter, I can't remember for sure, but I think when Chiron and Percy are talking, he's telling Chiron about Luke being like Kronos and Luke,
Yes.
and he's asking Chiron like how could that happen, and Chiron's like I don't even know, and he's basically talking about it where he's like disturbed by the idea that Kronos could have figured out a way to like put his essence basically into like a more human body when they're not supposed to be able to do that. And he says like he must have he's basically says like I don't even want to think about like what they would have done to like prepare Luke's body for something like that
Yeah,
because
because
they
that's the word they used. It's well prepared.
yeah, and like the point about that I wanted to make is that's what Luke wanted to do to Percy.
Hmm.
In the first book when he gives him those goddamn tennis shoes and to drag him down into hell. His plan was for Percy to be dragged down into Tartarus when he is 12 years old by himself and shoved into that sarcophagus so that whatever was happening to his body would happen to him instead, except that he didn't choose that. He would have had no idea what was going on, who anybody was, what was even happening. He would have just been trapped in there for years while they experimented on his body until Kronos could take over his body completely and they could use his body to kill everyone he's ever met and then kill him probably.
Probably.
um and that but that's like his plan from when he was in the first book. Like that's what he wanted to do to 12-year-old Percy was have him be like the little avatar for Kronos so he didn't have to do it.
Hmm.
And he that's what he was trying to get Thalia to do in Titan's Curse too.
Yeah.
And it's just that's like what are you doing? That's what I mean by like he doesn't accept any responsibility for anything he's doing because like he just tries to get other people to do things for him that he doesn't want to have to do himself. And the thing that he thinks is the biggest tragedy is that he actually has to do it. That he actually has to let Kronos in his body because he can't get someone else to do it for him. Because the manipulation games he's playing doesn't work. And when this whole battle happened, one thing I like couldn't help thinking about, like, what does Selena feel right now?
Yeah.
Because we like they haven't brought this up yet. That doesn't happen until some point in the last Olympian, but Selena is acting as Luke's spy because all of this time he's been telling her that if she helps him, that he will kill less of them, that less of her family, which are these kids at this camp with her, will get hurt if she tries to work with him. And even though she sees him like attacking the camp, it's like you don't want to give that idea up that he would actually hurt less of them because it's like if you're wrong, then your friends are going to die. And so you
Yeah.
don't want that to not be true. And he's a very manipulative person anyway, but you especially don't want that to not be true. Like, imagine what she was thinking watching all of this,
Hmm.
knowing that, like, he lied to her that whole time and that she's been doing this for him for years by this point. This is like the third year, basically, of her doing this kind of thing for him.
Hmm.
And all this time, she's been doing this for him because she believed him when he said that he wouldn't hurt more of them if she cooperated with him. And now she's finding out that none of that is true, and so she's been doing all of that for all this time for no reason. And it's just like every time like I see a video of people talking about like anything with Luke's childhood, I always just think about her and I'm like, yeah, it's like that meme from Finding Nemo of like good feelings gone. It's like bye. Bye, because I just think about what he put her through.
Yeah.
Purely just because Percy survived and he needed a mole in camp. He put her through hell, absolute hell, for years, and made her feel like it was somehow her fault that he did all of this. And
Hmm.
it's not, but it's like I don't even know what she was thinking during this time, but I almost want to remind people of like, what do you think she was thinking? Watching everyone she loves being attacked by Luke's army at this camp after years of him telling her that he would never do this, that he would not hurt everybody if she just cooperated with him, only to find out that was obviously not true because he's here now to kill all of them.
Yeah.
And it's just, when you think about people like her, you're just like, yeah, I don't care that his mom was sad. I don't care. Don't care.
Yeah.
But I just kept thinking about her during this part of like, God, that must have been so awful because she couldn't tell anybody about what she was even going through because she had to have had no idea like how they would react.
Yeah. Yeah. So the next chapter opens up like so sad. We find out that people actually died during this battle. So Percy mentions that he sees burial shrouds used on bodies, which he's seen them, but he's never seen them used before, essentially. Among the dead, Lee Fletcher from the Apollo cabin. He'd been downed by a giant's club. He was wrapped in a golden shroud. The son of Dionysus, who'd gone off fighting an enemy half-blood, was wrapped in a deep purple shroud embroidered with grapevines. His name was Castor. And then he kind of just like sits there thinking about like, I've seen both these kids. Like, I never knew Castor's name before he passed, and like, how did I see this kid all the time for 3 years and never even ask that? Basically,
Mm-hmm. Of course, he's being hard on himself,
yes.
but it's like you can't help that. But it that reminds me of the feeling of like when I was in high school, the class above me in high school. I don't know what the hell was going on, but
Mm-hmm.
somebody died in that class every single year that I was in high school with them. At least one person every single year, and it was just horrible. Like the year that I was like 16 and turned 17 was in 2001 when September 11th happened also. That was
Yeah.
also just a horrible year for me personally. Like three of the four grandparents that were still living all died in 6 months. In the first, like from like the beginning of February to like the middle of July before school started that year. And then
Mm-hmm.
September 11th happened. And then like 2 weeks after that, two different kids from the class above me both died by suicide. And then another kid died in a hunting accident, all within like a week. Our high school was literally like having a mental breakdown because of all these kids dying so close together. And one of the kids who died by suicide was the son of a teacher at the school. He
Oh my
was
god.
neighbors with my best friend. And he told me that morning that he saw an ambulance at the house and was wondering what was going on. And then we found out what happened during like first period. And that is like what we felt of like this kid is somebody because the kids that we knew went to the middle school we went to because our middle school was the biggest one for our small town, so we knew like half of the school
Yeah.
basically from going to school with them. And that's what we felt like of like he literally lived like two houses away from my best friend, and I was at his house almost every day after school. We saw them all the time for years. We went to school together. I remember seeing them walking around in the hallways together. We didn't really know their by name. We had to like look them up in like a yearbook to see who they really were. But it's just like a scary thing to like, especially at that age,
Yeah.
to realize like that somebody that you thought was just like somebody that you went to school with or was around is suddenly gone. And of course, because I'm me, the like note that I made about this part was, well, first off, the really sad part about that quote of Percy saying like this was the first time that I've ever seen burial shrouds used on actual bodies, and that's something that I never want to see again. And I immediately thought about how he's going to see that again.
Oh,
And I hate that because he's 14,
yeah.
about to be 15. He should not be like, this is literally children burying other children. Not even exaggerating. That is what is going on right now. It is children, like he is talking about a 17-year-old as if he should have somehow been able to save him when he's about to be 15.
Yeah.
That's absurd. But of course, the thing, because I'm me, that I thought was like, does Lee Fletcher and Castor dying make Luke's daddy be nicer to him? Like, does that solve anything at all? No. Which is like my entire point. Is like, I don't care why he's doing this. I don't care that his dad wasn't around when he was a kid. I don't care that his mom was severely mentally ill. I don't care because these children did not deserve to die because you had a bad childhood.
Yeah.
Like, I will never understand why that is hard for people to grasp with fictional characters and also real people. It's like, I would never take out my horrible childhood on somebody else. It's not their fault that my dad was a monster. Like, why would I do that? Like, yeah, sometimes you do that accidentally because you're traumatized and you don't know what you're doing. But, like, you know what you're doing when you're doing this kind of stuff where you're attacking somebody because you just know that it will make you feel good in the moment. And it's like, what does any of this do?
Mm-hmm.
Does those two kids being killed and everyone else at camp having to see their dead bodies and knowing that they can die and having to like mourn these kids knowing that more of them are probably going to die soon, which they do, like, does any of that make their parents not being there for them any better? Does this fix the situation with the gods not being around for their children, for a child to murder another child? Does that, like, Luke murdered people basically that he knows. He probably knew those two guys because they're a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
He killed them. And does that prove anything at all? Does that make the gods be better parents? Does that make them understand what they're doing? Like, no, they're just dead now. They're just dead now. It doesn't fix anything. Like, revenge and violence in this sort of way never fixes a single fucking thing. It is selfish. Like, he is mad about his life and he is willing to let other kids he knows die if it means that he gets what he wants. That kind of thing is never okay. And that is why, like, whenever people bring this kind of stuff up, I'm like, especially after reading this, I'm like, what are we even talking about anymore? Like, what are we talking about? Like, what are we talking about? Like, why does anybody past the end of this book ever bring up the idea that, like, oh, Luke was just misguided? Luke is actually a hero. Percy would do the same things as Luke if he just, like, made a couple different decisions. Luke just was doing what nobody else would do. He was doing the thing that everyone else needed to do, but nobody else was man enough to do it. Are you sure? Like, when I was reading this, I was thinking back to all those comments that I've gotten over the last year, and I'm like, what are any of you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? He almost killed an 11-year-old child. Like, it's very, like, good that Percy was able to literally run and stop Nico from dying, but he almost kills all of them. Like, Annabeth and him almost die, Chiron almost dies, Nico almost dies, like, Grover almost does, Juniper and Grover almost die. Like, everyone is almost dead at a certain point in this book. What does that prove for anything? Is Hermes going to be a better dad now?
No.
Because he almost... And the point at the beginning of this chapter, too, that they make is that camp is, like, destroyed. Like, there's a part where Percy is talking about how literally everyone is injured. Like,
yes.
Everyone. Everyone is injured. Everyone is hurt. Every cabin is messed up and knocked down and needs to be, like, replaced. Because it's literally like a war zone happened.
Yeah. Even Chiron got injured. Chiron got his legs broken and has to be in a wheelchair for it.
Like, the very end, the very end, Percy gets terrified because he sees Chiron get hurt and he's scared that he's about to die. And then he finds out that he's okay, that both of his legs are broken, and Chiron's like, oh, he says, like, something like, oh, this is embarrassing that I did something because he's been around for so long.
Well, and also, he makes a joke about it's a good thing that they don't shoot centaurs.
Yeah. but it's like they're like carrying around Chiron and putting him back in like an actual like wheelchair instead of it just being like a pretend wheelchair
Hmm.
because he can't walk because both of his legs are broken, and it's just everyone is injured. Every cabin is like knocked down and destroyed. What does this prove? Like, what does this do? It doesn't
Like,
do anything.
so to play devil's advocate, on the one hand, it does prove that the gods won't step in when this type of terrible thing is happening, but they never said they would. Like
Yeah,
that's
and I guess the point too is that the gods aren't the one that did this. Luke did.
mhm.
And so it's like Luke is talking all the time about how horrible the gods are. You're the one who showed up at this camp to destroy and murder all of your friends. You're the one who showed up at this camp to take it all out. And it's only by like the skin of their teeth that they all weren't killed. Like, you did this. The gods didn't do that. That was you. You're doing things that are worse than the gods would even do to their children.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like, this is much worse because at least like at least the gods like basically left them alone when they were at this camp basically. Like, they would try to talk to them sometimes, but you know, as long as they were at this camp, they were in like this safe zone where they could just hang out there every day, they could make friends, they could talk to other people that knew what it was like to grow up like this. They would be okay, and it was like this safe area where they could be. Even the gods knew not to like mess with them when they were there, and would just generally leave them alone. They didn't want to, like, Chiron is like literally that go-between person, which is why I like him so much, is that he's like somebody who deals with those abusive people but like reins them in. Like, they need to get permission to do things at camp. That's why in the second book they try to get rid of him and
Hmm.
replace him with Tantalus, somebody who is a horrible person, because they don't actually care about their kids. But also, like, Chiron is somebody that loves these children, that
Yes.
will like try to help them and will like tell the gods when they're being jerks, or like not let them do things, or come and talk to them when they're there or mess with them or whatever. If Chiron isn't there, it would be easier for them to do that kind of stuff. If somebody who didn't care about these kids were part of camp, and but he is there as a way to try to stop that. And so during this battle, like, Luke is the one that did like the most damage. He is the one actually doing the most damage to these children. Like,
Yeah.
and yes, if the gods, and yes, like the overall point of the series when we get to like the end eventually is that like the not only like Luke's ness, but more the idea that like people wouldn't have been tempted to believe Luke and join him when he was manipulating them and stuff, where it got this far and got to this point, if the gods hadn't done things that made people already feel like they would never do anything to help them.
Hmm.
And so that is the overall point with the gods, but in this part of the story, none of that stuff really matters
Yeah.
because the gods aren't doing this. They're not the ones that are causing this sort of destruction right now. Like, it's honestly like a pretty big reach in that sort of a way to say like, oh, it's all the gods' fault because Hermes wasn't around when Luke was a kid. And it's like, yeah, he wasn't around when he was a kid, but I don't think he thought if he stayed away from Luke when he was a kid because he knew he was going to die one day, that it would end with him murdering his own friends. I really don't think that he ever thought that that was going to be what would happen, and that would be a possibility, because that's not something that anyone thinks is possible.
Yeah. No, but no
And
parent's gonna think that of their kids.
no one's ever going to think about anybody. Like, that's why I get so bothered when people talk about even real life people this way, of like, oh, well, you know, this person did this thing to them and that's why they did it. And it's like, no, they did it because they wanted to.
Hmm.
They could have not done it. And that's like overall the point of this whole thing, is that like this like revenge, like pure just like personal, very like selfish revenge, it never goes anywhere that's
Yeah.
helpful in any way. And it just ends up with like these kids had nothing to do with Hermes. They had nothing to do with what happened to Luke or his mom or the Oracle or or Thalia or whatever other stuff that he thinks about to justify what he's been doing all these years. Um, they had nothing to do with that. They were just kids that had their own lives and wanted to like live past the age of 18. And now they're not going to in this world because of Luke, not because of the gods, but because Luke decided killing them, like stopping that didn't matter. Hey.
Yeah, so we hear about that carnage in camp, and then we have the Council of Cloven Elders. They decide to meet to decide Grover's fate. Soletis still doesn't believe them, even after they get multiple witnesses who saw Grover use Pan's panic power. He's just like, no, you guys are liars, blasphemers. We're not stopping the search. And Grover seems oddly calm, is kind of what Percy's noticing as he's defending himself. It's a kind of like confidence we don't see from Grover just yet. Mm-hmm. And he's able to be like, no, the message was pretty clear when Pan left. He said, this is on all of us. All of us have to be the people to look after the world and take care of the wild things. And so the search is useless. We don't need to search. We don't need the Cloven Elders. And this whole thing gets broken up by Dionysus finally decides to show up. And yeah, he's always been homies with the satyrs. So of course they're gonna listen to him, even though it's very begrudging here. Satyrs are falling over trying to obey him, serve him. There was a really funny moment. I kind of like giggled at it as I was reading it, but I want to talk about it right now. Okay, so while they're disagreeing about this, he's telling them to have a mind of their own, right? So he turns to a satyr. Hold on. He's saying he agrees with Grover that he thinks that Pan went away, and he says, it sounds like just the sort of thing Pan would do. You must start thinking for yourselves. And then he turns to a satyr. He's like, bring me some killed grapes. And the guy's like, yes, sir. Like, immediately after, think for yourselves.
I thought it was really funny, too, how that one guy in the council, I wanted to, like, stab him to death when he was being so mean to Grover. But then, like, Dionysus shows up and he's like, I'm just going to cancel this council. Like, I'm just done with you now. Like, just go away. Stop talking. I don't want to do this anymore. And they're all like, and the one that's being so mean is like, but this is the only thing that I have. And basically, and he's like, I don't care. Goodbye. Go away. Stop doing this. Just do something else. And I did want to say that I really like the character development of Grover, because what Grover is doing for the satyrs is basically what Percy does for the demigods, where like the satyrs have been so dependent on the gods to tell them what to do that they basically have been like helpless, where they feel like they can't do anything until they find Pan. And so they've put all their energy into finding Pan, and Pan is like, you don't need me to tell you what to do. You don't need me to like fix things for you. If you guys would have just like tried to fix the wild, or bring the wild back, or take care of nature without instead looking for me, like, you could have been trying to do that all this time instead of trying to find me instead. And that's very similar to what, like, Percy does with the demigods, of, like, we don't need to try to get the gods' attention. We don't need to try to do things to get their favor or whatever. Like, we can just ignore them and instead help each other out and do what we can do to help each other, instead of, like, depending on the gods and instead of feeling so helpless, like you just have to wait for them to respond. It's like, what if we don't, and we just like do things on our own instead? And so it was really nice to see Grover do that too with the satyrs, to bring them along to realize, like, yeah, you don't need Pan to tell you what to do. Yeah. You can try to help like the world without him being there to tell you. It's much better if they're not telling you to do it, because then it's just you figuring it out.
Yeah, well, and I love what the actual directions were. So we get Percy's narration of what they were. He told them the words of Pan, how they must save the wild a little at a time. He started dividing the satyrs into groups. which ones would go out into the national parks, which ones would search out the last wild places, and which ones would defend the parks in big cities. And so he's kind of like best he can, because Grover has been a searcher. Yes, he has been to some places, but like it's kind of interesting. He chooses all of the places they've been to when you think about it like that, like
Mm-hmm.
parks in big cities, national parks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so um, and I'm sure they'll find their own little pockets of wild to keep defending within that. Because I mean, like I'm trying to think of a good example. Um, I know a national park near me at Mount Tam. It was when I went to Mount Tam. I was looking at their social media and I noticed they started doing controlled burns at that park. And so, like, people are getting better at this. So you see national parks now implementing controlled burns because of wildfires here in California and starting to realize, like, oh, the native people knew what they were doing. Like,
Yeah.
they knew if we clear up all this brush before it becomes a huge problem, then it's going to not be so bad if something catches on fire and someone has a stupid gender reveal.
Yeah, my God, especially for gender reveals.
I'm still mad about that. And it's like I purposely wanted to be surprised. I was like, that is going to be my motivation through labor is what is this baby? You know, like who am I meeting? And so yeah, it's just for me, gender reveals like I get wanting to have another fun party. Just have a party.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
will say, like, when it came to, like, my sister having a baby, like, she just told us when she found out what the gender was, like, over text. Like, wasn't even, like, a big thing. She didn't do a gender reveal. She did, like, a couple posts like that for, like, social, Instagram and stuff for, like, other family and stuff that followed her there. But she didn't even do, like, uh, a baby shower or anything like that. She didn't want to do that. She had like a list basically, and people could buy things off of the list. And but other than that, she didn't do like a whole big thing because it's just a weird. You're like celebrating your baby's genitals.
Yeah, I
Like,
don't understand it. And especially if we're like I feel like it's not following the same line of like if gender is a social construct, why are we celebrating it? Like
hmm
pick which one. Is it a social construct and we're not going to celebrate it, or are we going to have pink and blue parties?
well, and like the gender reveals aren't really gender reveals. They're like sex like
Yeah.
reveals. It's just the sex of the baby. You won't know what gender they are until they figure that out for themselves. And so I remember seeing something somewhere of somebody saying that the gender reveal things that accidentally started fires got more extravagant because of transphobia. That people started like doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on that stuff by making them these much bigger events and stuff like that, where they would like accidentally start a fire by like setting off fireworks or whatever they did to start fires just because of celebrating their gender, because it was like they saw people not caring about it anymore, and so they made it an even bigger spectacle to try to be like, no, but this still does matter.
Oh gosh, wait, that reminds me of something I meant to bring up earlier.
Oh yeah.
K. Rowling posted another transphobic rant. It was multiple pages. Like someone posted screenshots, and it was multiple screenshots. So
It was I read like two of the paragraphs and had to stop for my own mental health.
I
But
read it.
it was like 9 pages of like screenshots that somebody took.
It all didn't stick, of course, because like why would it stick? But it was like a one day these gender warriors are going to like have to look back and what did we do? You know what did we do here? And it's just more of her like talking about men pretending to be women and keeping women safe, and like I agree, men pretending to be women is bad, but that's not what trans people are.
No. And like the thing I read was in the very first paragraph, she said like something about there are people that are saying that you can like change your sex, and I'm like, no, they don't. Like, you don't even know like the most fundamental basic thing about trans people, or just the idea of transness in general. Nobody thinks that you can change your sex. That's just literally like the what you're born as. what people are talking about is gender, which is not that. It's a separate concept. And so I'm like, you've dedicated your entire life into hating these people and trying to eradicate them from the world, and you don't even know the most fundamental thing about them. And like, I know that's what like fascism does. Like, they purposely like
Mhm.
don't really actually know about the people that they're going after, because if they did, they probably wouldn't do it if they actually understood. Especially like, just to like remind people about J.K. Rowling, she called herself J.K. Rowling so that people might think she was a man.
Mhm.
She has a like pen name as a man. It like, some people sometimes are like, "Are you like trans?" But you're like really angry about it because like you've been pretending to be a man to like get ahead. Like, you wrote Quidditch as like a sport that men and women play together. Like, that's the
Yeah.
whole point of the sport, is that they play together. And then you make it your entire personality that they shouldn't play together? Like, what is
The
going
first
on?
sport actually involves violence, like bludgers.
Mhm.
Yep. Anyways, but yeah, we just like once again she's being transphobic, so it's out there, and remember that there are people like the Riordans that actually want all people to exist in their magical world. So
Yeah, like I saw Rick Riordan on Blue Sky today posting about how he was reading a book that an author wrote about the queer people that were in concentration camps in Nazi Germany.
mhm.
If you want to like an author, maybe just listen to what he says, because the things that he posts are very like purposeful. He's talking about signs of Hitler, and that's pretty much it. Recently, he's just talking about that, like signs of that stuff happening right now. But either way, he's like talking about people like that. Like, that's a book worthy of you reading. It was like I'm pretty sure it was a fictional book that somebody wrote inspired by that, basically. But still, that's what he is spending his time reading and posting about online to get other people to read. That's worth people's time. Not somewhere in that rant, she was like, "How dare these famous people be against me?" And and things like that. And I always think, for people like J.K. Rowling, and things like that, I always think it's like weirdly fascinating how they can somehow always make themselves the victim of every situation. Like, when that law passed in the UK and everyone really aggressively was like, we really can't give Harry Potter any money at all,
Yeah.
because she used it to do pass this law. There's like no avoiding it now. She was posting things on her Twitter talking about how like, oh, we're in danger. Like, the time that women are in the most danger is when they're trying to leave an abusive relationship with a man. And I'm
Oh,
like, you just passed a law that made this very marginalized group of people in more danger in their daily lives, to the point that I would be like, they it's a scary thing for them to use the bathroom in
mhm.
public. And you're making it easier for them to be scared because you don't want to see them in public. You just want them to hide so you don't have to see them anymore. And you have somehow made yourself the victim of this scenario, acting like this group of marginalized people are going to go out and attack you when you've spent like at least $70,000 of your own money trying to make it harder for them to go out in public and use the restroom. Just like the bare minimum things. But you've somehow convinced yourself that you're the victim still.
Ugh,
How do
okay.
you, like, it's, I know it's like how they think. Like, that's why when you see somebody say something about whatever, you need to actually think about what they're saying, because anyone can find a way to make themselves the victim of a situation, no matter what it is, even if they're obviously not. And she's like a real life person that acts like these fictional characters that we talk about. And I really wish she didn't have the power that she did, but she just does.
Unfortunately.
I really, really wish that she didn't. But there's some post I saw recently of somebody talking about, like, you guys let her get this powerful. Like, you let her do this by going to her stupid theme park and buying her merchandise and seeing her movies and buying her video games and still being willing to engage with the Harry Potter fandom at all. You've let it get to this point. You could have stopped it a long time ago if you would have just done what you're doing now back then. But people just didn't.
Yeah.
And now we just have to deal with it. Like, she can just go after whoever she wants now.
Yeah, and I will say, like, inform your more, like, friendly to these issue boomers in your life. My mother-in-law recently was at the Universal in, like, Florida, and I actually did tell her, because she was in the Harry Potter section, she's like, what house is William again? I was like, don't buy him official merch. Like, J.K. Rowling publicly brags about using this against trans people. Please don't buy them merch. And she didn't. So, like, you know, there are people that don't know any better that still engage with Harry Potter. And it's worth informing them, because there really are people that separate art from artist and just like, oh, they have a public profile, I didn't even look at it, you know?
I always think it's interesting that people only separate art from the artist when the artist has done depraved things.
Yeah.
But when it's like somebody who comes from a marginalized group that writes a really big story, then they don't try to separate the art from the artist when they're racist.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Then they can't separate it, right? Like, people couldn't separate Leah being black from playing Annabeth.
Oh my gosh, they still can't. I feel like I'm seeing more new fan art of her blonde, of like Annabeth blonde.
I like feel like every time I see people still making fan art of her being blonde, I feel like it's just a microaggression in the least. Much less like a macroaggression, just like an aggression. But it feels like that. Like I get like confused when I see that stuff now. Like, why, like, when you have the cast, like why draw things of what they used to look like? That doesn't make any sense.
I still go back to like Rick's. We'll go to the book accurate Nico and just have a picture.
Honestly, if you wanna, like, if you haven't like looked at Rick's stuff on Blue Sky yet, you should, because he puts alt text in on pictures, and the alt text is it's really funny. Like, there was some picture where he was holding up all of the scripts in a big binder for season 2, and the alt text was like Rick is a meanie and won't let you see what any of these scripts say. And it says like Rick is holding up a big binder of the season 2 scripts and is a meanie and won't let you see anything that is written in this picture from the angle that I took this picture in. And it's always like silly. And like the alt text for when he posted the picture of the original Nico is like original picture of Nico looking like he just got run over by a truck.
Yeah, why did they make his face like that?
I don't know. It's so funny. It makes me laugh every time I see it. And it's just like funny how we've all turned it into a joke, including like Rick himself. Like when he had like a Twitter that he used to post on in like 2010 and 2011, he used to post like that picture of Nico when people were like wanting him to like, you know, get together with different characters and stuff when they realized that he was gay.
Oh my gosh.
It's just really funny.
Big pull.
Oh my gosh.
Okay,
yeah.
So where we were at, so after the council like is done, Percy walks up to Tyson telling Briares how to get to the underground forges. And we find out Tyson's planning on staying, that he thinks that Percy's going to need him, and they have like a cute little moment there.
Yeah, my heart like always feels so good when just the littlest things with Percy, but like when Tyson's like, no, I have to stay here because my brother needs me, and I'm like, oh, like he does need you. So thank you for staying.
Yeah, so let's see, at dinner then, Percy notices Nico's not hanging out with anybody. He eventually follows him into the woods, where Nico once again talks about how, like, nobody really wants me here. There's not even a Hades cabin, so I'm gonna go figure some stuff out. And he kind of leaves it very vague of, like, I have questions. I'm gonna go find my dad and see if I can find answers. Percy just
One
kind of has to wish him good luck at that point.
one thing too with that part was that I didn't remember happening because I don't remember any of this stuff. Um, was um, Percy walks up to Nico talking to Bianca,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and Bianca is basically like saying basically like goodbye
Mhm.
to Nico and is saying just they're just saying like I love you to each other, and now that Nico is like realized that bringing her back won't fix anything. Um, and I just wanted to like I guess make a point of that because I do see people talking about Bianca sometimes as if like Bianca was terrible. She never went back to like talk to Nico. She never like really talked to him after everything happened, but it's like no, she did. In this book she talks to him a lot and goes out of her way to make sure that he's okay. Um, she was the one that brought Percy to him to try to stop him from hurting himself, which thankfully worked. She talks to him and gets him to understand what's really going on and then checks up with him during this time. And so she definitely talks to him and makes him feel okay and tells her that she loves him and that she wants him to live his own life and to that they'll see each other again one day, but don't like destroy your entire life trying to bring me back because you deserve to live your own life. And she does all of that. That's exactly what an older sister can do in that situation after what happened to her is she does do what she can to help him to put him kind of back on the right path after he got lost because of her dying. I feel like people are too hard on her
Yeah.
because I feel like they just kind of forget these scenes happened because I was like very pleasantly surprised that they did because I was like, yeah, this is very sweet that she did take the time to go see him. And even in the future books, like there is a scene that I do actually remember, and I don't remember even what book it's in. But in the Heroes of Olympus books, there's a time when he's with Hazel, who is his, sister too, and he accidentally calls her Bianca when
Oh,
they're talking, and it's just like a sweet thing of like he just loves his sister, and he just accidentally calls her the wrong name, not because he doesn't care about Hazel, but because that's just the kind of thing that would happen when somebody you love dies, especially when you're really young, and you realize like you're going to live most of your life without that person.
mhm.
And when you actually love that person and that kind of thing is going on, that just makes it harder.
Yeah.
Um, but it is like a very sweet thing that, she basically spends this whole book trying to help Nico from going off the deep end, and it works.
Yeah,
Um,
she does it in her own way because she realizes seeing her right off the bat probably wouldn't have been good for him.
and
But
like she,
yeah,
she does a lot of good. Like she tells Percy, like, my death is not your fault. Stop blaming yourself.
yeah,
And like those were like the main things that needed to be like kind of fixed after she died of letting Percy like at least telling him like your death isn't my fault even if he doesn't believe that. She at least said it out loud and also helping Nico realize like my death is not Percy's fault and I made these decisions on my own and it's nobody else's fault but mine. Please be upset with me. If you're going to be upset with anybody, be upset with me because I'm the one who left you at camp alone.
yeah,
That's all you can ever ask for. And so I was very glad that that's a very good like um, sibling relationship. Like she did get like swept up and stuff, and she died because of it. That's a very harsh, circumstance that she got for making like one decision in her life where she put herself first and was like selfish in a way when she shouldn't have been.
mhm,
But there's no like we said that when we were reading Titan's Curse, like she's a tiny little child. She's 12. She does not understand like the consequences of the action she's taking. She just thinks she's going on a fun trip. She just thinks that joining Artemis is something fun to do.
yeah,
She isn't really thinking about what that really means until it's too late. Um,
yeah. They didn't even explain to these kids what immortal means in that
no.
sense.
Like she doesn't understand that like she's probably not gonna see Nico again after that. She just thinks that this is something fun for her to do her own thing because she's 12. You don't have concepts of things like that when you're that young. Of to really understand like the gravity of the choices that you're making. She just thinks she's doing something fun and exciting for herself.
Yeah.
And she thinks like, oh, I'll still see Nico or I'll still be around him. She's just, when you're that age, you just can't think about like the long term, unless you've been super traumatized anyway. You don't think about like the long term consequences of the decisions that you're making,
Hmm.
because you're not, your brain hasn't developmentally like developed enough in order to like think that way.
Yeah.
Um, and like those of us that are super traumatized at that age, we do that, but we're literally the only people that are doing that. And that's why usually we're not like very well liked, is because we are the ones that are thinking about that stuff when everybody else is like, yeah, everything will be fine because we're 12 and we don't have a concept of the idea that things couldn't be fine.
Yeah.
That's literally all it really is. And so I like that they had this storyline with like a 11 and a 12-year old,
Hmm.
like talking about this kind of stuff in like age appropriate ways. And then they do talk about the conversation with like Nico and Percy just made me really sad because I've definitely done this before, which is why it made me sad. But like Nico is so convinced that camp won't accept him when they already do.
Yeah.
Like they're inviting him to dinner, they're offering him places to stay, they're they're like breaking their own rules so he can be there. They never had a Hades cabin because Hades is kind of like known for not liking the other siblings.
Hmm.
And so if you would think about it, like if that god is known for not wanting to be a part of the rest of like the Olympians, wouldn't having their kids at this camp kind of make him uncomfortable and make them uncomfortable because they're kind of putting themselves in the middle of like this battle between Hades and his brothers? And so like putting them in the middle of that isn't exactly the best decision in the entire world that they could have ever made. And so that's likely why they don't have a camp there, or why they don't have a cabin there, because it wouldn't be the best idea without somebody like Nico existing who doesn't care about any of that stuff. It's like he's the first Hades kid in a while that's existed. And so it's one of those things of, even though there isn't a cabin for him, they're making room for him anyway. They're breaking their own rules about where you can eat for dinner and stuff like that so he can come and feel accepted by everybody. Everyone wants him to come. Everyone wants him to be around. Like Chiron is like ready to adopt another traumatized child. He's like waiting and just waiting for the moment to do it, and like he did with Percy at very much the same age. But Nico just, I understand him wanting to like look into what happened with his life, like how did they end up at the hotel, and like who was that attorney that let them out, and what happened to the like my mom, and like how did we end up here and all that kind of stuff. Those are like very valid questions for him to want to know and want to look into. Like I get it, but it also is just like, it feels, when I read that stuff, it felt more like those are valid things for him to do, but it feels like he's using them as a reason to like just keep himself separated from all the kids at camp because he's afraid that his like the fact that his powers are different from everyone else's in some sort of a way will make them not like him. And so it's like, well, if I just tell myself they're not going to like me and just stick with that and never give them a chance to like change my mind, then
Hmm.
I don't ever have to like be vulnerable and like set myself up to be hurt again. And so I'll just, if I just stay away from them and convince myself that they would never accept me anyway, then that's like a way that I can stay safe, right? Because that's basically what he's doing. Because the kids at camp are ready to accept him, and they would. Like, even if his powers are considered like weird or whatever, he's not his powers. And it doesn't like, the other kids at camp do weird things too with their powers. He's
Yeah.
not the only one that has like a kind of strange thing that you can do with your powers. Like Percy can talk to horses.
Yeah.
Like that's weird. And even if the like it's like a kind of generally unsettling thing to see like, dead people come back or things like that, like the way that he can do that kind of stuff. Nobody really ever describes it as like a judgment on him.
Mhm.
They're just saying like, yeah, it's unsettling to see somebody use like dead people or have the power to bring dead people back to life because that's like against what is like the natural way that things work.
Yeah.
But they're not saying it as like Nico is gross, Nico is disgusting, I don't want to be around Nico because he's weird. It's more of just like, yeah, his powers are unsettling, but he's just like
Mhm.
a cute little kid. Like when Percy gives him the mytho magic figure, and
Yeah.
he like still knows how much it's worth. It's like, yeah, this kid was a mytho magic like obsessed little child 8 months ago. Not even this is because this is like June, so this was 6 months ago. And that was him. He's still that kid. He just had a bunch of trauma fall in his head, but that kid is still him. It's just getting him to want to try again, I guess,
Mhm.
after feeling so betrayed by Bianca dying. Like you, it's very understandable why he feels like that, but it just makes me sad reading him be like, maybe I should just leave. And I don't blame Percy for like just letting him do what he wants to do because that's honestly the best route anyway.
Yeah.
Like
Like,
just letting him make his own decisions and see what happens. I really
right.
love Percy and Nico. I think that it's genuinely confounding that there are people who think that there's something wrong with their relationship.
Yeah, you can tell it's very brotherly.
Yeah, like Percy's literally like, I must protect this child who reminds me of me when I was little.
Yeah.
And it's just like trying to help him in that way that you do when you have if you're an older sibling, when you have a younger sibling, or just see somebody younger who reminds you of stuff you've been through before. You just want to like help them in some way, like get through similar things so they don't have as hard of a time as you do. Like that's our entire existence on the internet is doing that.
Yes.
Um, and so it's like that's all he's trying to do with Nico, and he tries to protect him the best that he can. Nico, I'm not sure. Still, during this conversation, when they're talking about like Luke knows about you now,
Mhm.
and you need to like watch out for him. He still doesn't get it. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think he still gets it at this point. Like how dangerous Luke slash Kronos actually is.
Mhm.
Because he just thinks, well, I can just stop them with like the dead, and it's like it's not going to work like that all the time. And he's just such a dangerous person. He's too young and like too new to this whole world to conceptualize the idea that somebody like Luke could like come after him and do the things that he would do when he does. Um, I it like makes me nervous that he still doesn't like understand that. But at the same time, it also shows that he still has like that innocence about him still, that he can still be like, no, I'll be fine if Luke, who is embodying the body of Kronos, comes after me to try to take me
Yeah.
or kill me. He would probably traffic him for $1 billion, because remember that in this book, Luke is trafficking demigods, literally paying people money to kidnap demigod children.
So he can train them to be child soldiers.
Yeah. Okay then. Um, but yeah, either way, this conversation was very sweet of just Percy trying to help him and trying to take care of him as best as he can, but also that's like the whole hard balance when you have somebody like that around in your life is you want to help them, but you know that you can't do like too much.
Mhm.
Um, because if you do, they, especially if they're a traumatized child, they might get like scared away by you like showing too much how you actually feel almost about them. And
Yeah.
so you kind of try to act like I don't care that much about you in that sort of a way almost, because if you tell them like they it's like that whole reverse thing that happens to kids like us that are super traumatized is when you find out that people love or care about you a lot, it makes you want to back away from them because you're afraid that you're going to let them down somehow.
Yeah.
And so you don't want them to know that you feel like that so that they don't stop talking to you. And so
Oh.
you're constantly in like this balance of like trying to tell them what you think about them, but not tell them too much where they like disappear from your life and you never see them ever again. And this book is a really good depiction of showing Percy trying to do something like that for a kid that's going through a hard time, and he just kind of tries to let him make his own decisions. He's always checking up on him to ask him if he's okay. Like in the middle of all of that craziness and Daedalus's like place when Kelly and them show up and all that kind of stuff, in the middle of all of that he's asking Nico, "Are you okay?"
Yep.
And just like trying to check up on him and remember that he's a little kid and needs some reassurance and stuff. Nico is acting like he's like older than he is, but he's like, no, I know better than that. But it's just a very sweet like storyline with them in this book, and I generally don't remember what happens in the next book, but it gets better. That's all I remember, because I remember really liking it in the last book too. If I don't remember what that actually means at all, that's fine. It's more fun that way.
Yep. So Nico ends up leaving. Let's see what else happens. And then Dionysus approaches Percy for a conversation. And so it's like almost, if it wasn't Dionysus, if it was anybody else, this would be a pleasant conversation. Mm-hmm. But Dionysus, he's basically like, so you saved us, even though we all voted whether or not to kill you. Like, thanks. Oh, okay. And we find out he undid the madness that Chris Rodriguez was going through. Let's see.
Oh yeah, and Percy is asking him, like, why did you do that? Because he doesn't do anything to help anybody, like, ever. Mm-hmm. The line is something like, sometimes, like, kindness is better than a sword, mm-hmm. is, like, basically the way that he puts it. Like, sometimes, and, like, Dionysus of all people saying that, it's like, what did your son dying do to you to make you realize this very true fact? But it's just like, okay, out of everybody, you're the one that's figuring this out. But Percy's just looking at him like, and I would also be looking at him like, are you okay? Like, because you don't say stuff like this. But he doesn't help other people. But either way, I'm glad that he brought back Chris Rodriguez into being okay after Luke just left him in the labyrinth. Mm-hmm. And would never have gone back to find out if he was all right, and that Clarice gets somebody like that and in her life that makes her happy, instead of Ares, yep. who doesn't make anybody happy, or just dealing with all the other stuff that's gonna happen. It's a little bit of foreshadowing, I suppose, for things that come up in the next book if you know what's coming. A little bit of that kind of stuff, but it is interesting to have Dionysus of all people have that conversation with Percy, yeah. about like sometimes it's better to like talk to people basically instead of trying to kill them. Yeah, it's like, yeah, you could say that.
Yeah, and and he also brings up, as a mortal, I was never a great fighter, athlete, or poet. I only made wine. People in my village laughed at me. They said I would never amount to anything. Look at me now. I still haven't told the story of his backstory on my personal TikTok. Like, I've been meaning to, because he has a very volatile relationship with his mom's family in general, and like I do as well. So there's a little bit of like, I feel a little connection to him, at least in that version of his story. And I don't know about because there's a lot more lore with Dionysus that I'm not familiar with. There's people that think that if Greek mythology is the template for Christianity, that Dionysus is Jesus. And like, because his lore does get that crazy. So I really do need to do a deeper dive into him, but it's interesting that we get this like actually okay moment. I don't know. It would be pleasant with anybody else. It's just okay with Dionysus. We're like, okay, we're not going to kill each other. We're on good terms right now. Okay, good.
Well, I think, this is like the way that I interpreted this kind of stuff is Dionysus has this conversation with Percy where he's basically saying, like, nobody thought that I would ever amount to anything, and so if you feel really low right now, it doesn't mean that things aren't going to, work out for you in the end. And the part with Poseidon coming up also happens. And, like, can you just, like, notice that things are bad enough right now that gods are showing up trying to give Percy a pep talk. And he does not understand that's what they're doing. But that's what they're doing. They're worried about him enough by hearing about what happened at camp and everything that they're coming to try to make him feel better. Mm-hmm. Like, Dionysus hates him, but he's coming up to him to try to make him feel better about camp being attacked because he definitely feels responsible for not being able to stop Luke from doing that. Mm-hmm. And so, do you know how bad it has to be that the gods are noticing, like, maybe we should check up on our prophecy child and make sure that he's okay? Mm-hmm. And after this horrible thing just happened to him, and they're trying to make him feel a little bit better, or like give him a little bit of hope that things one day will be okay, even if it doesn't seem like it right now. Like, the idea that Dionysus and Poseidon are the ones that are doing this is just like, you know how bad things are that they're the ones figuring that out. And Percy does not get it because he doesn't realize, like,
yeah.
He just doesn't, like, when you're going, like, it sounds like a stereotype, I guess, or whatever, I don't know. But when you're going through, like, a really, really hard time, you're, like, aware that you're going through a hard time, but you're not aware enough to, like, almost notice, like, how you're responding to what's going on around you. Mm-hmm. And so, like, everyone else is, like, trying to, make him feel better and stuff. And he's just like, why are people saying these things to me? And, like, I don't get it. And it's like, it's almost like they know that you just saw a bunch of people die and also were terrified for your life and were the ones in charge of saving everybody, and they're trying to make you feel better, but he just doesn't see what they're doing because he just doesn't see himself like that. It's just funny that he's so confused by Dionysus being nice to him. But that's what he's trying to, like, make him feel better. Yeah. After two kids died at and camp is destroyed, when he's supposed to be the one to save them.
Yeah. So then we skip ahead. There's, like, well, not quite yet. First of all, Percy leaves camp, and he kind of mentions that he wanted to talk Kronos with Annabeth, but there's literally no way to talk about Kronos now without talking about Luke. And so they can't discuss any of this. It's all kind of still awkward and painful, and he's definitely sensing that she's hurt as well. So the one thing we get out of this scene, though, is finding out the actual last line of the prophecy. Percy starts, like, being a smartass because Annabeth's like, I just don't want to talk about it. Like, let's not talk about it. Like, trying to change the subject. And Percy's like, okay, so this part happened with this. And as he's going through the line, okay, hold on. Let me find where it starts. So, you shall delve into the darkness of the endless maze. The dead, the traitor, and the lost one raise. It says, we raised a lot of the dead. We saved Ethan Nakamura, who turned out to be a traitor. We raised the spirit of Pan, the lost one. Annabeth shook her head like she wanted me to stop. We shall rise or fall by the Ghost King's hand. That's Minos. And the child of Athena's final stand, that was Daedalus. Destroy with the hero's final breath, which also was Daedalus. And Annabeth blurts out the last line then, and lose a love to worse than death. And she, like, kind of, she says, are you happy now? After saying this to Percy. And she says, Percy, I didn't know what the prophecy was talking about. I didn't know if she faltered helplessly. Luke and I, for years, he was the only one who really cared about me. And so that's kind of where they leave the Luke talk at. Yeah. So,
but he says in that part, like, afterwards, he says he feels, like, cold suddenly. And there is no way that you can say after she says that, that there isn't like some weird romance thing going on between her and Luke. You cannot say that. Like, you cannot. Like, I did not remember this at all. And you can't, because that is what she is talking about. That, like, there is probably a point in this book where she thought that the last line about, like, a love was about Percy when he was gone and they thought he wasn't going to come back from when he was on Calypso's island. But she is, I've like, I said this while reading this book, but she has like romantic feelings for Luke. And the reason why she's like conflicted and stuff is because she also has romantic feelings for Percy. And the reason why she hates Rachel so much is because she is somebody that could possibly take Percy away from her. Yeah. And it's like what I said before, that there's a part of your brain when you're around somebody that you know isn't good for you, that you're like convincing yourself like, oh, I can save him, I can fix him. Like the thing that Pan said to Annabeth, she said like, your role is not what you think it is. She thinks that her role is to somehow save Luke from himself. And I'm quite sure that she feels like a failure right now, thinking that she failed in being able to save him. And so that's what she thinks her role is. It's not at all. But that's what she thinks it is because he's an abusive little fuckhead. And he's made her feel like no one else cared about you except for me. Like when she says that, I was like, is that what Luke told you? Because this entire camp loved you and cared about you. Including like Thalia, including even your dad somewhat cares about you, even if he does a really bad job of showing it. Even the kids just at this camp love you and care about you. It's not just Luke. But that's like someone who wants to use that for likes the idea that you care about them more than anyone else. They would like bring that kind of stuff up to make you feel like indebted to them. And that's clearly what she thinks about with Luke. And I think during this book, she knows that she has feelings for Percy, and I think she knows that those feelings for Percy make a lot more sense than the feelings that she has for Luke. But she, for whatever reason, can't let go of the feelings for Luke, especially after being manipulated by him a lot during Titan's Curse. And so she's like mad at Rachel because the idea is like, well, if I fail with Luke and everything doesn't work out the way that I want it to, at least I'll have Percy. And then when Rachel shows up, it's like, oh, I could maybe not have Percy anymore either. And it's like, yeah, but Percy isn't just like your backup.
Yeah.
Percy isn't just like somebody there if things with Luke don't work out. And like, I honestly think that this part, like this, especially this next part with Hera, is her like realizing that, of her realizing like, because there is like a whole part of the whole dynamic when you're with somebody that is abusive, like the whole domestic violence sort of thing that is going on with her and Luke. There is a part when you realize like you feel like a fool. Yeah. That you were like trying to defend this person to people who told you that they were not the right person and you should stay away from them. And it makes you feel like you're an idiot for not listening to people who try to warn you about them. And then when they do something that is bad enough that you can't ignore it, like this whole thing with camp, it's like she spent all this time trying to defend him still, and then he does all of this to make her look like she doesn't know what she's talking about. And it does leave you in this place of like, okay, well, I just have to deal with that. Like, I just have to deal with the fact that I was wrong about him, and that doesn't feel very good. And so she doesn't want to talk about it, but this part is like, she doesn't want to have to admit to Percy that she loves him. And it is like a thing of like, I completely understand where Annabeth is coming from about being abused by Luke and not wanting to let that go, and him exploiting that for everything that he can. And wanting to still hang on to Percy too, because she doesn't want to lose that as well in her life. But at the same time, it also is awful that Percy has to sit there and listen to her say that I love this person. I thought that I loved him, and I still kind of do now. That a love that has gone to somewhere worse than death, that has to be Luke. And she describes him as somebody that she loves. And it's like that's just a really hard pill to swallow, to know that somebody that has done all the stuff that Luke has done to Percy at this point, that she felt that way about him.
Yeah.
Even despite all of that, it just is like, whoa. I don't think he realized that she really felt that way about him until this moment. Because why would he? Honestly, like, usually, like, rationally, you wouldn't think that she would. Because you would think that she wouldn't after everything that's happened. And so you can understand how she's being abused by him, but it still is pretty awful that that she had to admit that to him. Like, I'm glad that she, like, was forced to, in a way, because it's the only way that they can ever, like, move forward, is if she's actually honest with him about what's really been going on. That
Yeah.
he didn't really realize that things with how she felt about him went that far. He needs to know that, like, if they would ever have any sort of relationship in any positive way, even just like friendship wise, he needs to know that. He needs to know, like, what she was feeling. And, like, earlier in the book, when she's in the cabin and she's, like, upset and Percy hugs her, and then one of her siblings comes in and, like, breaks up the hug, and Percy's like, we're just looking at maps. Like, one of, like, the few funny parts of this book. Like, she's worried about that because she's bringing Percy along when he's not supposed to come on the quest. And the last line in the quest is that somebody you love dies in a way that's worse than death. And so I'm sure she was afraid when that happened, and especially when he disappears after the volcano, that he was the one that was gonna die, and that her bringing him on the quest somehow led him to dying that way. And then it ends up being Luke. And it's just that's just really hard. And I think he handles it honestly better than most people would. Hearing somebody say something like that to you, that they love somebody who's done things like that before. But you can have empathy for both of them, but still be upset. And, like, this sort of scene is why I thought that she was the mole. Like, especially this scene at the end of this book. This is why I thought that she was. Because she's in, like, she loves him. She's basically was at some point at least in love with him, if she's not still now. And so she feels that way about him. He could get her to do whatever. And so I was like, Percy, get away from her. She's not a safe person. If she is willing to feel that way about him, she's not somebody that you can confide in. Like, I didn't want him to tell her how he felt about things, or tell her even, like, I remember in the beginning of The Last Olympian, I didn't even want her to know, like, the plans of their battles, because I wasn't sure if she was going to tell Luke about it because of stuff like this. And this is why that's, like, I always defend that decision, that I thought that she was the mole, because to me it was, like, a very, like, logical, like, decision to think. And I honestly think that that Rick put stuff in to, like, kind of make you wonder if it could be her, and other people that it could be besides Selena, because it does make sense in a weird way for it to be her. Because, I mean, Percy's right, like, Luke can manipulate her so easily. That he could get her to agree to basically anything. But that is, like, a really big thing for her to admit to him, even though he had to, like, pull it out of her, and didn't want to have to admit it. But it's like, hey, if you're the one feeling this stuff, the least that you can do is admit it to the person that you're being jealous of.
Yep.
That's, like, the bare minimum. Just admit to him that you still feel feelings of love for somebody who's been trying to kill him since he was 12. Like, at least do that. Because if you're going to have those feelings for him, the least that you can do is just be honest with him that you still have those feelings for that person.
Yeah.
Like, ugh.
So they get broken up by Hera eventually, and they find out that Hera has kind of just been along for the entire quest. She says that she's the reason. She paid Garyon. She let his arrow fly straight. she sent him to Calypso's island, which I think that's the moment where Annabeth was like, "Oh,
Ay, ay,
shit."
ay, ay, ay.
And then Annabeth, my dear, surely you've seen how I've helped. I would sacrifice for my. I would like. Oh wait, sorry. I would welcome a sacrifice for my efforts. And yeah. So okay, Percy calls her on the fact that she really only wants a perfect family. Once again, that Hephaestus was right about her. That all that is bullshit, and it's kind of treated like, oh, we already know how Percy feels about the gods, so whatever. Like, better watch yourself, kid. But when Annabeth decides that she's going to turn her back on Hera, as Hera's saying all of this, that's a moment where, like, you do see a change in Annabeth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was telling you this before we started recording, but to me, like, Annabeth during this part is like somebody that's coming to terms with being so wrong about someone
Mm-hmm.
and realizing like Percy was actually right about Luke this whole time.
Yep.
And so you can the way she like defends him, she like almost sounds like she doesn't know what she's saying as she's saying it. And it's I think it's because she's like almost like she's usually the one that says something to the gods when Percy's like being like fuck you guys, like how I will like pop up and be like fuck you and your mother, and then you'll show up and be like anyway and like say things in like a calmer way that's like their sort of dynamic too. And so but this time instead like Annabeth is like, no, actually, I agree with him, and doesn't say anything to like, placate the gods or like calm them down or anything like that, like she usually does. She still is like not happy with them, but she definitely tries to like keep the peace more with them than Percy does. And so
Yeah.
this time she's like, you know what? No, never mind. And it's almost like her like trying this out of like maybe I should like defend him in this way to Hera because I just did like tell him this and I want to do something to try to make this better because the other stuff that she's saying is that between this book and the next book she goes to live in San Francisco
Mm-hmm.
with her dad, and she says she's probably going to go to a private school and she's probably going to hate it, and like that just makes me think of every time Becky has like mentioned that one of her trauma triggers is teenage girls, and especially teenage girls in like private school clothes. And I
Yeah.
was like, hmm. And I'm like, yeah, teenage girls is also a trigger for me too. When the scenes in this book of teenage girls being mean, it brings back all of those sort of feelings for me too. But it's like she's going back to living with her dad when she doesn't really want to be there, really far away from camp and stuff. Just because I feel like she probably feels like she just needs to get away from everybody after everything that just happened.
Yeah.
But so it's like she's kind of like admitting defeat in a way of like I'm just gonna go home with my tail between my legs for a while and try to figure out how I ended up here. And so in the end of that, she like defends Percy to Hera when Hera is like, "You will regret this one," and like, granted, like yes, they do regret that one day, but Hera is the worst, like the absolute worst. Oh my god, the soliloquies people write about like imagining Hera being killed because of what she does in Heroes of Olympus is amazing.
So it comes
Because
much later.
the best way to sum that up, like without before we get to those books, obviously, is Hera is the one that kidnaps Percy.
Mm-hmm.
Hera's the one that kidnaps Percy and keeps him in a coma for 6 months alone by himself. And when he wakes up in the most traumatizing way humanly possible. When the other kid she kidnaps wakes up on like a school bus surrounded by other kids that are all his friends, Percy wakes up alone in the forest by himself with animals attacking him.
Oh my gosh.
And is like and like almost dies a bazillion times and is like eating food out of dumpsters because he doesn't have any money or any food and he's starving. And it takes a long time for him to even find a single person around him, and she definitely put him there on purpose like that because she's horrible. So she definitely gets back at them for that in a horrible way because she has problems. But Percy is absolutely right about her. Like I think she's the best example for somebody like your mom, and even a little bit like my mom, but especially like your mom.
Actually, more like my grandma.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh my God, That's it. That's the ultimate evil.
Yeah,
Um,
so my grandma is full, like, I call my grandma a family narc. And so she is totally the family narcissist. She likes, just to, like, put it into terms without getting too into it, Encanto. Like, she is the Abuelita from Encanto, 100%.
oh yeah,
Yeah, and it's she wants us all to be perfect, and Kara very much gives that. They call her out on it. Trying to think if there's anything else to this conversation.
like what did she send? Did she send Percy to Calypso's island because she thought that would be helpful
You know,
for
it's
him?
funny for the goddess of marriage and for somebody who's dealt with infidelity so much, sending him to Calypso's island, like sending Rachel along, trying to complicate things. Like, why?
Yeah,
Are we still mad at Aphrodite over the stupid apple or something?
yeah. Are you like mad at Percy because Percy was born from Poseidon cheated on his wife or something? I don't. What is
I don't
happening?
know.
Like, what is
Anyway,
going on? Either way, it's just like, is this? Are you really doing all this because he just mentioned that Thalia exists?
yeah. And so we don't really get much more after that because Argus pulls up with the van and says like it's time to go. So then there is the jump forward to Percy's birthday. And this was the other moment where I was like, oh, what you're feeling is having a dad. Because Paul Blomfist has a conversation with him in the kitchen where he's just like, are you having girl trouble? Like, it seems like a lot's going on and girl trouble, and here, have some punch. And Percy's like, I don't know why. I feel oddly comforted the same way with Chiron. I was like, because you have a dad.
Because they're being a dad. Like the fact, like this is why there's so many fics of people just talking about how much we love Paul. Because Paul doesn't know about anything yet. He doesn't know who Percy's dad is, which is really funny really soon when Poseidon shows up. But he doesn't know about anything. He just knows that he thinks, even though Percy was involved with something at the school that Chiron fixed for him,
Mm-hmm.
he just knows that Percy is a good kid that is just going through a hard time, and he doesn't need to know what that hard time is or anything. He just wants to like help him get through that hard time by like supporting him and being there for him. And when I read this, I was like, are there people like that like don't need to know like what you're actually going through to actually care about you and just be like, yeah, I can tell something bad is happening. I just want to help you, like help you along. And it's just like he's just so sweet. And then of course he like asks Percy's permission to like marry Sally, and I'm like, yes, marry Sally. Marry
Yeah.
Sally and make Sally happy and give Percy a hug every single day for the next like year at least of his life, because he's gonna need it, and I want to, and he deserves to have somebody like Paul in his life,
Yeah.
because he's just like the nicest guy, that he doesn't know anything about anything, and he's still like, I just want to help support this kid because you seem like a really nice child,
Yeah.
and I want to marry your mom. Is that okay? And he's like, you're asking my permission?
Yeah.
And Percy being like, well, my mom's really happy all the time, so yeah, that seems like a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
It's
like,
so
yeah.
yeah. So then enter Poseidon. He just randomly comes up, and Percy even remarks it's very much like a how the hell did he get here? Because there's a doorman at their new apartment, and yet he's knocking. He didn't get buzzed in. How the hell is he here? Anyways, Poseidon walks in, and Tyson immediately is like, "Daddy!"
Daddy!
And Paul's like, "Wait a second, is he yours too?" Like,
Yeah.
and they're like, "No, different mom." Yeah, and let's see. So Poseidon's looking like his usual like beach dude self. He has a fisherman's cap on that says Neptune's favorite fishing cap. And I see what you're doing there, bro. Um, he's wearing Birkenstocks and a Hawaiian shirt. It's just kind of funny.
I've
Um,
met dudes like that.
yeah, Sally is like somewhat awestruck, but also you can tell she's like, oh, mostly only flustered because he is a god, and like, what the fuck are you doing here? But
Yeah,
like,
like, why are you in my New York City, like, loft? Like, what is going on right now.
Yeah, but anyways, he ends up taking Percy aside, and basically he wants to hear the entire story from Percy's perspective. Like he actually wants to hear him out, and Percy even remarks like, "It's really weird. He was actually listening to me. Like he was actually actively listening." And then at the end of it, he's like, "Wow, so Kronos is back," and you can tell like he actually cared.
Yeah, like I said, you know how bad it is that Poseidon himself shows up and is like, "Are you okay?
Yeah.
Is everything okay, my favorite son?" Like admits that he's his favorite son.
Yes. Yeah. So that comes up because he brings up Antaeus, and I do like this part of the conversation that they have, because he was like, how is it that Antaeus can have this shrine to you that's just dead bodies? Like that's terrible. And Poseidon says, Percy, lesser beings do many horrible things in the name of the gods. That does not mean we gods approve. The way our sons and daughters act in our names, well, it usually says more about them than it does us. And you, Percy, are my favorite son. So that's how he tells him.
Because he doesn't do any of that stuff in Poseidon's name. He just like makes friends with sea creatures.
Yeah, Bessie.
Which is what Poseidon would want.
Yeah, oh, I love that moment too where Paul introduces himself to Poseidon because, Sally can't speak. And he's like, blowfish? And he's like, no, blowfish. Oh, well, I rather like blowfish. So, too bad.
So it's just funny because it's like you can feel like the fight or flight moment for Sally and Percy both like, I don't know what to do. Should we say something? Can we move? Like what's gonna happen?
And Percy's thinking this whole time, like, I haven't told Paul just yet. Like, it's not quite the right moment. I wasn't gonna tell him just yet. But yeah, so Poseidon, he gives him a sand dollar, which I'm guessing this is gonna come up later as something that's useful, some sort of magical item. And I thought the conversation here was funny too. Spend it wisely. Spend a sand dollar? Yes, in my day you could buy quite a lot with a sand dollar. Rick's definitely showing his dad jokes there.
Yes.
Let's see. And Poseidon takes off from the kitchen, which Percy's like, okay, now we had to try to explain to Paul, like, oh, he really did go out the fire escape because, like, how else would he have left? And
he just, like, dissipates into dust.
Yeah, he just misted himself away. Like, it says on a warm ocean breeze out the window. Let's see. Then we get to Nico shows up. And Nico is showing up, like, on the fire escape as this is happening. And, let's see. So, trying to figure out where to start with that part. Oh, wait, no. First he notices the flower. So he's...
Oh, yeah.
The shirt
he plants Calypso's flower.
Yeah. So I do want to talk about this one more time, just because, and this is a video I made separate from the podcast, where I talked about how my new running theory is that Calypso's island is supposed to be a fate worse than death in like mythology. And it's kind of funny that we also had that line in the prophecy, but in the sense with Calypso's island, it's the opposite of what Achilles chose for himself. The you can live a long life, but nobody's gonna know your name. And so Ojiji is like literally so remote, no gods go to visit there. It's a paradise. Like you have a very prosperous life if you live there, but at the same time, like nobody's gonna know you. You're gonna go out without your friends and family. And you talked about it in our last podcast about Calypso as this is essentially like him ideating unaliving himself. And I feel like this is him almost releasing it here. Here's this flower, here's this thought I had of maybe people would be better off without me. But he literally was just like the the main player in the fight that happened. You know, he was the I'm gonna save everybody. Like you have to stand back, as you said, and be the one to like jump in if anything happens. So I think he recognizes now, like I literally can't leave. I literally can't. They actually do need
Mm-hmm. It's really nice. You see it like Chiron and Paul alone would be enough to make him want to realize, like, no, people do love me and they do care about me, and it is better for me to be here,
me.
even
Yeah.
if he like forgot about that for a while. And then
Yeah.
of course, like kind of ironically, Nico shows up, who's kind of like forgot about that for a bit for himself too, and
Mhm.
is like immediately, because Nico's still like an 11-year-old child, like immediately is like trying to talk about like basically like shop talk, like talk about stuff with like the battle, and then is like, is that blue birthday cake?
Yep. And
And he's
Percy
like,
just like
do you want some, young child? Yes,
yeah.
I know you want cake. I know you want my mom's cake.
Well, and I mean, what he said made me so sad too because he's right. He's like, I don't know that Nico's ever had a birthday party or even been
Hmm.
invited to one. And
At least not
so,
the not one that he would like really remember in like the casino or anything.
yeah, so Percy chooses to invite him in, and Nico basically is saying, I figured out a way for us to take down Luke. Like, and so that's the note we leave this book on is just they're having this little friendly moment, and also whatever invincibility that Luke may have now because he is partially Kronos, Nico may know a way around it.
Hmm. And there is that whole weird thing that like they threw him off of the cliff in Titan's Curse and he was fine before Kronos was like completely in his body at that point. And so there is clearly something going on that they don't know.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so whatever they did to his body to make it well prepared, again, scary thought, but like
They
it's
did something.
yeah, they did something. He's clearly not just mortal.
No spoilers if you know what it is, because I know what it is, but I'm not saying what it is.
I don't remember at this point, so no spoilers for me. But yeah,
Yes.
so that's where we're leaving it this book. And as Shannon said at the beginning of our episode, our plan for just a little bit is to have some guests and just talk about different subjects. So attachment styles, and we'll try to keep it mostly to the characters we're dealing with in those first 5 books. And then we're gonna have our friend Jean come on and talk about fandoms. She's been in fandom spaces for a very long time, and we don't have any ideas after that, to be completely honest, and that's why we are open if anyone wants to join us for any topics that we've been talking about. Um, you know, we'll take suggestions. Our social media, we will take messages. Instagram is definitely like where I check my messages the most. If you guys
Hmm.
want to talk to me,
Yep.
yeah.
There's other stuff we could do, but it's more fun to just like see what comes up.
Yeah, there's and I did promise we'll do a deep dive on the first Titan War,
Hmm.
just before we start the last Olympian, so we kind of have a background of what
Hmm.
happened in that battle.
And I did want to at least have us read the Demigod Diaries book because all of those short stories happen before the last Olympian, and they do kind of make the book a little bit better, especially the Luke stuff of
Mhm.
talking about how he felt before everything happened.
Yeah,
That definitely helps, like having that in your mind before you get to like the last book with him in it.
yeah,
So that would be worth it. But I know the other people like the other stories in that book too. None of them are like super long. Obviously, they're all short stories.
Mhm.
But either way, it's definitely worth it to read that because it does set up the last book well.
Yeah,
And the last book is like, oh my god, uh, we're gonna have to read like 2 chapters at a time because so many things happen in that book
yeah.
that it's like,
We'll figure out how to break that up once we get.
because it's like it's just so overwhelming. Because like not even exaggerate from the very first chapter, like there's no breaks. There's no like build up. There's no like waiting. It just like as soon as it's like 5 pages into the first book, things just start happening, and it never stops. And so there's like the abundance of things that happen in that book is just like you can't really analyze more than 2 chapters at a time because you just can't do it. There's just too many things happening. You need time to like recover from what just happened in those chapters before you start reading more.
Oh gosh.
God.
Yeah.
It is a very, very good book. It's really, really good. Like it shows up on a lot of like best like finale book lists because of how good it is.
Yeah.
It is really, really good.
Yeah, I don't remember much from this one, and you guys will notice as I pull it out for our next podcasts on it, it's the only one that I have in hardback because I did buy it when it was that new, that it was only in hardback.
That's cool that you still have stuff that is that old.
Yeah,
I
my
do not.
copies are all super old. Yeah, anyways, I should go to get William to bed.
Hmm.
All right. And we managed to make it without your phone dying this week. So that's
Yeah,
good.
cause I got my charger, so I've just been charging this whole time. So that's much better. Okay.
All right.
Either way, next week we'll have Sky on to talk about attachment styles. You probably know who she is. Hopefully, if you don't, you should probably figure that out soon.
Let's see, Ray.
Because that will be a fun episode of like two people that both have like an autistic monotone voice and Mandy.
Okay. God. I'll be our character.
I love that we both sound like that. It makes me I love the fact that her voice sounds like mine because I get subconscious about it sometimes.
No, you're good. You're good. Anyways, yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.